Today is June 12th, 2014, and my name is Jason Higgins, and I am an intern with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. I am in the library at Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, Oklahoma, with Dr. John Wood to discuss his experience in the United States military, as well as his time at Oklahoma State University. This is part of the Spotlighting Oklahoma Oral History project. Dr. Wood, I would like to thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's begin with when and where you were born.
Well, I was born 1970, July 28th, here in Stillwater. And I always hear the story, if you want to hear more about what happened after that. The day I was born, I've heard this story, of course, a couple different versions, but the day I was born, my mom and dad both had news, and my mom said, well, we're going to have a baby today, and my dad said, well, I just lost my job today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so I guess my dad had told on his boss to his boss about some things, unscrupulous things he was doing, and so before he left, he fired my dad, and then he was fired. So anyway, they lacked a job, and so we ended up moving over time to Anaheim, California, Southern California, to an uncle. And the uncle said, oh, there's jobs out here. You can work out here. And they didn't find much, and my mom didn't like it. It was crazy. Southern California, even back then, was pretty dense and chaotic, inexpensive and everything. And so my other uncle said, oh, there's jobs up here in Pullman, Washington. And so we moved up to Pullman, Washington. And then we stayed a while. And so I went to elementary school and whatnot. My parents divorced in around 74. And then we moved around quite a lot. I remember in the... I think it was like the second or third grade, we had this little diary we had to write in class, and the question was, how many houses have you lived in? And I had to count in my head, and by the third grade, I think I had lived in about 15, 16 different houses.
Wow.
At one time or another.
And were you living with your mother or father?
At that time, I was living with my mom.
Okay.
So, and then my mom ended up losing us because my dad took us, and this was in, I think, around the fifth grade, fourth and fifth grade. My dad took my sister and myself, and for a year, and then my mom just married this guy just to get us back. he was a loser and a drunk and beat my mom and stuff like that. So that only lasted a few years, and then. But we stayed with our mom, and I moved back myself with my dad when I was 16. So I moved back to Stillwater in about 1986. And so I went to Stillwater High School from 86 to 89. Okay. And then I subsequently graduated from Stillwater High School in 1989. And from there... I went a semester, and then I went to boot camp. My dad had always said, hey, you should go to the military. So I did a lot of research on what I would do, and I actually went through the ROTC initially and checked them out, applied and everything. And they said, oh, we'd love to have you. We'll give you a full ride, except for the first year. You just have to suit up, but we can't give you any money that first year. And I was like, well, if I'm going to do that, that sucks. That's not the point. And I need to pay for college. And so... I started sending postcards, and the Marine Corps guys called me and said, I can be over in 30 minutes. Okay. And I was living on a trailer on my grandmother's property, and he came over and just real intimidating, like, you got to sign up now if you want to do this. And I was like, oh, okay, I got to do this. So I went in, signed up, and it was kind of funny too that so I signed up active duty for 4 years. Actually, it was I was kind of excited about it. It was photography, and I would train in Denver, Colorado, and now I'd just be a combat photographer, I guess. And I thought that was really cool, and I was excited about that. And it's funny, though, because when I told my family about that, they ended up having a family intervention. They said, in our family, you go to college. You're going to go to college first. So you're either going to go to the reserves or you're going to get the heck out of that obligation. And so they really pounded, they sat around the table and said, this is what you're going to do. And I don't know, my dad ended up going for a master's degree. He didn't finish, but all my two uncles and my aunt have master's degrees. My grandpa had a master's degree, which is weird because that was back in the 50s. He had a master's from OSU.
Huh.
So he was an entomologist here for a number of years. He retired here from OSU.
So let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
What did your parents do, actually?
Well, my dad, I was going to get into that. My dad was, he worked at Small Grains, which is the Agriculture Research Center. When you come into town in 51,
Okay.
you see that building on the left. It's kind of looks like a farm type of thing, and there's a big white fence they created.
Okay.
And so he did wheat research. So he bred wheat, and I worked out there for a couple summers and about a year during school, year or two during school, and we did all sorts of I had sickles, and you cut the wheat tops off, and then you put them in a bag and to isolate the wheat, and then you take that weed out, and then you end up isolating it, and you end up cleaning it and whatever. So basically, it's all about breeding and creating new wheat strains. And so my dad was he was integrated enough that he was able to, I think one of the strains he was able to name. They went with one of his names for the wheat strains. So he'd been out there for probably a few decades.
Interesting.
And he ran the run of the greenhouses. Now my mom, and I can talk about my stepmom as well. My mom stayed in Colorado. She was in Colorado, and she moved to Colorado and got married, and actually got married in Idaho. Well, no, she got married. She met a guy in Idaho, sorry, and they moved to Colorado and got married. And so when we were living there, and so I lived in Colorado for about 6 years before I moved in here.
Okay.
But so that was about from 1980 to about 1986. I lived up there, and we left right after Mount St. Helens blew. Have you heard of Mount St. Helens in Washington State?
Absolutely.
So right after it blew, I remember when we moved back, I had this big jar of ash because we were kids playing in ash. There's just big piles of ash, and we're just jumping in these ash piles, and we wore masks for about 2 weeks after Mount St. Helens blew.
Wow. How far were you from Mount St. Helens?
Well, it was Pullman. It was still a ways. It was kind of on the, I think it was about 2/3 of the way on the other side of the state. But I remember we were at a picnic, and the sky just, you could start seeing these, looked like clouds just coming in real thick. Like it was night and day. It really was. And it was, it was like during the day, and all of a sudden it was like dark. Like, oh my God, that's quite the storm coming in. And you could see it, and it was just kind of like this. It was, and next thing you know, when we were leaving, it started snowing, and this is in May. It started what we thought was snow, and nothing we'd ever seen before. And we got in our car and got the heck home. Heard on the radio the Mount St. Helens blew. It was like, oh my God. And we got home. Our dogs weren't there because the neighbors took our dogs and put them in the house because they were so freaked out about it. Like, your dogs shouldn't be out there in this. It was pitch black by that time during the day, and it just started raining ash like it was like it was snowing, and it was pretty crazy. So we just had these piles of just everything was gray. It looked like snow, but everything was gray. And everything was probably that thick, and then there was, as they were scraping roads as if it were snow, there'd be piles of these things that would just be like this. As was, over time you'd see these giant piles that were just taller than us, and we would just, once it finally dried off, because it kind of got wet too, and once it dried off, we would just plow into these things and play and just jump around. But we were freaked out for a while. We just got used to it. School was canceled at that time. We usually got out in June, and so school was out about a month early. We're excited about that one too.
I bet, yeah.
So,
Wow.
but that was, then we moved from there to Colorado, not because of that. It was just because of jobs and stuff. And so, but yeah, I didn't really get along with my stepdad, and I wanted to get to know my dad. And from 81 to about 86 over the summers, we visited our dad. My sister and I would visit our dad over the summer, and then he got married to a lady over time, and became our stepmom. And
Was this an older sister or younger?
younger sister.
Younger sister.
Yeah, she's about 3 years younger.
Okay.
So.
And there was another point
Yeah.
that you brought up that I wanted to ask about. You said during this family intervention, you said that first we go to college. So does that mean that you come from a long line of military soldiers background?
Yes,
Family history?
yeah, and college educated people. At least, well, it was weird because my mom's side was not educated. So my mom went to a few hours of college, and my stepdad did too. And but there was not a whole lot of history of going to college on that side of the family. This side of the family, they all had master's degrees and lived in Stillwater. So when you live in a college town, you got the college right there. There's no excuse for you to go, and so they're all highly educated. We have a real educated family. So we're just like, you're the big loser. You don't do that. I mean, my dad, for example, he went to college in the '60s, and I remember hearing these stories that he went to college, started partying, and basically he got kicked out of OSU, and so then he ended up going to the military. He went to the Army and did that, and didn't go to Vietnam. He was Vietnam era, but he didn't go to Vietnam, and he ended up going to work after that. And then we came back to Oklahoma. Of course, there was a lot of pressure to, hey, you're the one who hasn't done really much college. So he went back to college, and after about a decade, got his degree from OSU. He'd take a class or two a semester, and just finally got through it, and then started his master's. Like, I don't even need to do this, because his job at Small Grains assumed a master's degree, so he had to keep going to college. He had to show he was going to college for that anyway. My grandpa went to World War II, and he was a decorated vet. He I think he had a Purple Heart. He was a pilot. It was before there was an Air Force. It was an Army. He was an Army pilot, but then right after World War II, it turned into the Air Force. So he would have been Air Force, and he actually reserved Air Force for a number of years.
Pacific?
Pacific.
Pacific.
Yeah, and he ended up being a lieutenant colonel in the Army, but he said he just played cards a lot in the reserves, so he didn't do a lot. So I come up from a line of military folks. On my mom's side, I also come up from a long line. I saw that, for example, I had folks in the Revolutionary War. The father and son went to the Revolutionary War at the same time.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's just a whole line of military background.
So it seems like you have a strong dichotomy in your family.
I do.
With your father and your mother.
Yeah.
So, did you have any favorite subjects in school or anything like that during that time?
What
High
level?
school?
High school?
Yeah.
Well, high school is weird for me because I moved here to Stillwater in '86, and I didn't really. I still have this kind of weird feeling with the folks. Like, we're gonna have our 25th reunion this summer, and I kind of know these people, and I kind of don't know these people. They already had their cliques formed by my sophomore year when I showed up. Already had cliques, and I was a person who, since I moved so much, I've read that you can strategize and deal with it either way. One, you make friends with everybody as soon as you can, and then you don't make deep roots with anybody because you just know you're not gonna last. That's also called intergenerational poverty when you move that much. You realize that, because it's like, and I think that's identified. That's what it was. That's why we move so much, because what happens is you can't afford last month's rent, so you just move so you get out of the rent, right? And you leave trying to nobody, So that's what was going on. We just didn't have any money, and so that's what I think it was, and so because of that, I just didn't make friends with people. and I would, except for like make a best friend.
Right.
I'd find the other person who didn't really socialize with other people. We ended up kind of talking and chatting, hanging out, and I would always go to that person's house, or they'd come to my house, and we just hang out and do things. So I always had a best friend, and then I leave and I find a new best friend, and that's just how I tend to deal with. I'm still that way, I think, a lot. I have a best friend, and then other people are just, they come and go, and so I have some deep friends, but so I don't. For high school, so I didn't have a whole lot of friends. I had a couple good friends, and then I was weird because I made friends with the international students who would come in. They'd come for a year because they didn't have any friends. So I hung out with these people who didn't have any friends. They had the same problem.
Yeah.
So I identified with the international students, which I think is cool because I get a feel for their culture a little bit, even though I didn't go there, but.
Yeah.
And so maybe that kind of animated my sense of interest in travel. So because of, I don't know if that was the seed, but thinking about it that way, maybe so. But because my wife and I, since getting a job and stuff, we've been to 29 countries. So, and of course that counts Saudi Arabia, and I was in Kuwait and Bahrain in this time period for the Gulf War.
Very well traveled. Yeah.
So,
did you maintain those relationships with these international students?
No. They just came and went.
It's a lot easier now with Facebook.
It is. Yeah, they just came and went. That was the 80s. Well, and there's a lot of differences between that makes me think about between Desert Storm and what happened just more recently, Iraq and Afghanistan. We didn't have email. We didn't have phones. We didn't have we were isolated. It often took 3 weeks to a month to get a piece of mail. And so, that's how it used to be in the past. So there's definitely a transitionary period. I remember one time they came to our pause and they had this kind of tent and they had this phone, and the people were lined up like all night to call for like 5 minutes their parents or their loved ones or whatever. And I was like, screw it, I'm not going to wait all night to talk to them for 5 minutes. I'm going to get some sleep. This is ridiculous. And so I didn't do that. And I waited when we got back to our base in Saudi Arabia. We were able to call as not much as they want. Of course, they were really expensive phone calls. But now they have cell phones, they have email, that you can totally communicate with folks. I saw this, I think it was like a real estate webpage thing. It was a commercial, and how the husband was in another country trying to look for a house, and they were looking on I think it might have been Zillow or something like that. And it's like he was on the battlefield, and she was in her car, and they were chatting about a house, looking for a house. It's like, oh my God, that's so foreign to me, because when I was in, you just were isolated. You had those folks you were with, and that's it. You don't.
It's interesting in that I don't think a lot of research has been done in that area. I can kind of foresee a lot of effects about that with, you think of soldiers isolated in combat, but now you have, it's global.
I think the Gulf War was pretty much the last one.
Yeah.
Really.
Right.
Because the internet wasn't until 94. Right. Google and stuff like that with the World Wide Web.
Right. So it's almost still the same as World War II?
in some ways.
Yeah,
in some ways. I mean, the food was different. We had MREs, which were the packets, which they still have today, but it's like a bag, and it was plastic, and you ripped it open and stuff. Back when my dad was doing it, in Vietnam era, he had cans. Like cans of sardines you had to open, and you would, on your dog tag, you would have a can opener as well. So I didn't have to do that. We just went and ripped these things open, and everything was contained. In cans, you'd have to go, I want sardines, I want, this, I want this and this, and this. You get like 4 or 5 cans, you got to open all these things to eat. So that's a different transition.
Definitely.
So.
Well, let's talk about your path in the military.
Sure.
So you had your family intervention who kind of slowed you down a little bit.
And so I went to the reserves.
Right.
So I went from combat photography, which I thought was pretty interesting, to the only slot they had was wireman. It's like you could be a wireman. And there might have been something else. But I was like, okay. And I wanted to be a tow gunner, except for my eyes were too bad. A tow gunner, I guess you had to have really good eyes. And a tow gunner's more infantry, and you get on a Jeep and you shoot this projectile, Jeep. The wireman, you just have wire, and it was a terrible MOS, to tell you the truth, because, there was no movement up. I would have to go to another school again. I'd have to go to radio school just to even get promoted be on corporal. So it was a real dead end type of area.
Huh.
And it was just super simple. I was just cutting wire. It was stringing wire around a pause. A pause is artillery. You have it. When we're there, you had 8 guns. Like these were guns, okay. And you'd even have, if this is considered a battery, of gun 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you would have your platoon commander, and they were all vehicles. So these are all 5 tons with pulling howitzers.
Gotcha.
And then you would have basically a Jeep or Humvee, and it would house the platoon commander. I would typically be with those guys, at least during battle, and then we'd be hooked up to FDC, Federal Forward Direction Control, FDC. And there's 2 batteries, and there are 2 wiremen per battery, or platoon, sorry, this whole thing's a battery, each platoon. And you basically had to keep these things wired. So there's wires all the way to the guns, there was wires wires to FDC, then there was wires to what's called Antenna Hill.
Okay.
Probably easier if I just drew all that for you, but and it'd probably be helpful to tell you a couple stories that I have if you want to hear those.
Sure, do you want to go into that, or
Yeah,
would
you
you
have a
like
piece
to
of
talk
paper?
about basic first?
Sure.
Before you get to
Okay.
your MOS?
Okay.
Pendleton?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So can you talk about what it was like going through basic as a Marine?
Okay, so it was a reserves, but still you go to the basics. And the basics, you go and it's a 3-month deal initially, and then you do another month after that. So you do 3 months in Pendleton. You have 3 phases. First phase, you're just a total recruit. They call you a recruit even, and you're usually wearing like your jungle pants and your cat. They call them khakis, but they're jungle fatigues as pants, and then like a shirt, like a sweater. And it was cold at this time because we started actually in December, and so it was cold for quite a while anyway. And then you have your what they call cover, which is a cap, and it's all the camouflage stuff. And you would have a number, identify you. They would shave your head so you had nothing on your head, and it felt weird. Like the first night when you're there, they don't tell you this. I mean, there's a whole lot of just non-information. That's part of the control mechanism. They control the information. They feed you information you need to know, right? But they would go in and, you get on this bus and all of a sudden they start screaming at you, and you get out of the bus, you stream out of the bus, they have these footsteps, and you step in the footsteps and say, stand there, find some footsteps. And they just start screaming at you, and you get in line and they shave your head, and basically they start giving you clothes, and you find your barracks, and I mean you're exhausted by this time already. You go to the barracks and they give you what you called your knowledge, which is a book, and it's called your knowledge. They just always refer to it as your knowledge, and you're up all night. They keep you busy all night, and then you get ready and go do whatever you're going to do the next day, and you do a lot of exercising and a lot of whatnot. But that first night, they don't let you sleep, so you're sleep deprived right off, and that's just for control, I think, and whatnot. And you don't realize, you're just like, what are we going to do? Because you're just like, let's go. Well, keep reading your knowledge, or polish your boots, so they got us polishing your boots, and you got to clean your boot. They give us all these little tasks, and clean the barracks. So I had to clean the barracks, and not knowing what we're doing at all, and with our heads just freshly shaved. And it's funny too because a lot of guys had you had to put your sweater on. And it's a sweatshirt. It was usually a gray sweatshirt, but inside they have that weird cotton stuff on it, and it's new, so that stuff comes off. So you'd have guys that inevitably, because they're just all out of it and tired, they have these little cotton balls on their head sometimes. That first night, because they're just like, and you see these cotton balls, and it's like, and I looked in the mirror and I had a cotton ball in my head. It's like, oh man, everybody's got those. Because I was laughing, other people had them, and I realized I got one too.
Yeah.
So it was just just very surreal. People crying in their rack the first week. I was pretty sad too. Like, what did I do? I said, why am I here? This is crazy. This is just ridiculous, You end up moving to other barracks and whatnot. But you move to second phase. Second phase is weapons training.
Right.
And you also, I kind of liked it. And the reason was it got a little more freedom. I mean, this was so monotonous and crazy. You go to, you actually go north from the base. They call it MCRD. And you move to, I don't know what it's called, but it was a smaller base, sub-base, I don't know what it was. But they had the rifle range, and they also had a mess hall. And so you staffed the mess hall. And my job ended up being, for some reason, and for that whole month, pretty much, I washed clothes. I was a laundry person. And there's pros and cons to it, because there's a lot of like leaving you alone, and I just knew what I was doing after a while. However, at the end, there's some people getting pissed off because people were missing some pieces of clothes. All of a sudden, they were just like, I don't have those, I don't have that. I was like, I don't know what you're talking. You put it in the bag. You put it in a bag. All your clothes in a bag, and you wash it in that bag, so it can't be lost.
Right.
So if it's not there, it's you didn't put it in there. It's not me because I didn't put that. I don't touch your clothes individually. I put it in this bag, it made sense because it can get so confusing as to whose clothes is what, because all you get is markings and stuff like that. But anyways, I was in the laundry for about a month, and you got enough food, and you go to the rifle range and whatnot when you need to, and blah blah blah.
So you had a little time to reflect at that point then.
A little bit, yeah. And I it's funny, I sat and talked to this guy who was actually a sergeant, and he would come in here and he'd come in there and just shoot the shit with me, and we just chat, and then I had the drill instructor was like, what are you doing talking there with this guy? You know, he's a sergeant telling me to talk with him. I'm talking with this guy who has a rank. I'm a private, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, so I got chewed out. And then we end up leaving, and when we come back, third phase is you do some other kind of advanced stuff, and I can't remember exactly all of what we did, but a lot of it's a blur, you know.
Yeah.
But we actually end up having our camis the whole time, and we did a lot of more advanced stuff. Did some urban warfare training. So anyway, then we graduated, and by the way, I remember one time. Okay, this is something that I probably shouldn't have done. Okay, so we went out, and it was the end of the second phase, and I was in my tent, and we all had tents, and we're outside of these tents. And I don't know why, I just had this feeling I had to get out of there. And so I went to the bathroom and realized, I mean, they have these sentries. They have these people that are just our people walking around, because you had fire watch, called fire watch, which means for like an hour or two you're up and you're I had watch as well. We were there for several days, just outside camping, right? And I remember one time, and I was in shape. I was on the OSU track team, cross country team, and so I just felt like I had to run, you know. And so I remember this. I went to the bathroom. And then went to the bathroom, and while the guy wasn't looking, I went around the backside and just started running. And I ran and found a road and just kept running. And I knew, gosh, if I got caught, I'd be in huge trouble, like go to the brig or something, like I'm escaping. But I wasn't escaping. I was just running, and I was just trying to just feel free for a little bit. And it was in the middle of the night. It was probably like 2 a.m. I knew nobody was up, you know, and I just ran like crazy. Yeah. And then I saw a vehicle, and I had to jump in the ditch, and the vehicle went by, and then I was like starting to freak out. So I was like, okay, I've been out here a long time. So I turned around and started running back, and then went to the bathroom, behind the bathroom, and then went back to my tent.
Interesting.
So that was kind of an interesting something I'll remember, because remember, I'd be in real big trouble for that one.
Yeah, that's AWOL, isn't it?
Yeah. But
wow.
So it was an intense moment. The whole thing was pretty weird, and you know, the drill instructors sometimes would pick people out. So right at the end, for some reason, in the third phase, I kind of got picked out as somebody this one drill instructor didn't seem to like, and he would what they call bend you. And bending is where they make you do exercises, and they would do some crazy exercises sometimes. Like one that was the craziest, that was real tough. It doesn't sound tough until you do it. is you do like push-ups, for example. Okay, push-ups, go do 10. Okay, now do sit-up. Okay, now push-up. Now sit-up. Now push-up. Now sit-up. Now push-up. And the transition, you're just constantly push-up, push-up, right? And it just constantly, and you're just so worn. And it's called bending you. Yeah, and it's just it's a punishment. So come in here, and they say, come in the classroom, which you have all these racks, and you have this open area, and this is where you sit, and they talk, and they'll teach you stuff. But the classroom is also the place where they bend you. And so if they want to make you an example, they would have these guys out here and just doing push-ups and sit-ups, and come back just sweating, and just, oh my God, and going back, and you'd have to line up in front of, a lot of times, line up in front of your rack. So.
And they do that in front of the rest of the men, right?
Uh-huh.
To
Oh,
make
yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah.
So did that feel random to you at all? Like the selection?
Often. Oh yeah, often. Yeah, yeah. And sometimes it was selected because they didn't like you, or selected because you didn't do something right. But sometimes it was just random. They also had this thing that they're not supposed to do. I mean, there's a few things they weren't supposed to do. Like they weren't supposed to cuss, but they cussed like crazy. The enlisted guys would cuss like crazy, you know. And it was funny because when an officer came, they said, "Okay, you can't cuss. Okay, remember not to cuss. The officer's coming." And of course, we're not cussing because we're just recruits. Of course, we get in major trouble. But the drill instructors had to watch their cussing because the officer came in, right? So that was interesting. The other one is if you got in real trouble, if you really pissed off the instructor, what they could do is, see, they banned over time, and I don't know when they exactly banned it, but they banned the ability to just beat the crap out of you. I mean, they used to be able to just smack the crud out of you, you know. And they just smack, you know, and you'd be bruised and stuff. Well, people got in trouble because they're bruised. So what they found is there's a place right here they can hit you really hard, and that it knocks out the breath, your breath and everything, but it doesn't leave a mark because it's right here. But what they do is they say, we're going to spend some time in the whiskey locker. Well, the whiskey, and by the way, all these names have a lot of like ship names, like as if it were all on a ship, when it's not, because the Navy is above us, and so all these, you know, so they call it the whiskey locker, and it's just a closet, and they would put you in the whiskey locker, and they would just go, and the drill instructor like, you know, you're like, and then have you leave, and that was your way of beating you without getting in trouble.
Right.
So luckily I didn't have time in the whiskey locker, but there was a few other people who were.
So did you experience any like initiation rituals from the other men? Like no?
We did have, I mean, not really initiation, but there was times, for example, it's not initiation, but I remember one guy was kind of getting covered because he peed in his bed, and he kept peeing in the bed. And so they would, in the morning, I was like, what are you doing? Found out he was peeing in his bed, because they would take his sheets before the drill instructor would come, and then they put the other blanket over, because you had to make the bed make it tight and stuff like that. And so they would take the sheets and then go wash them real quick so that he wouldn't get in trouble.
Right.
And they were covering for him.
Right.
Yeah. So he kept doing that, and I think he finally got found out because he kept doing that. But one of the things that was weird, it was, initially when you get to boot camp, like the first day or two, you go to what's called Moment of Truth, and you sit in this little theater, and they start saying, okay, if you're caught with drugs in your system or anything like this, if you've done anything bad in your life that we need to know about, Moment of Truth is you come down, you can tell us about it, and we won't get you in trouble. Like, okay, like we trust that, right, for one. So what's interesting is when I came back, I got to know my bunkmate role, because you get to know your bunkmate, because your bunkmate can often helps you with your bed and whatnot, because it's your rack as a unit, right? You got to make sure you'll get in trouble if your rack mate's bunk is not right? You can get in trouble. So you work with each other and you help make beds with each other, which is nice. But my bunkmate in second phase came to me and goes, I got to tell you something, man. I was like, what? He goes, I smoked a joint before I got in, the day before boot camp, and Moment of Truth, I didn't say anything, and they drug tested everybody. You had to do a urine analysis, and the results came in. He was positive for pot, and they said that he was warned that he was probably going to be processed out within a week. And so he was just all gone. He was gone one day, and of course, information is so under control, I couldn't even ask what happened to him, right? So it was only because he told me. And then all of a sudden I didn't have a bunkmate. And for a while I just didn't have anybody, so I had to do all this on my own, and that took a little longer to do that. So, and then another time, I started getting called out for this reason. I couldn't believe it. So we had they ended up issuing us in the third phase these really nice camis, right? And they folded them, and they're real nice. And they're like, these camis go in your rack or in your foot locker. You don't touch them because they're clean, they're perfect. So the day you graduate, you're going to wear this, and they look nice, because you're wearing these other ones out. These are your pressed, almost like Sunday camis or something like that. Well, we got them and we ran back, and it's like you only have a few minutes to get this secured. It means you got really quick and open your locker. And sometimes if you get too fast, you miss it, and you've done that with lockers. You miss the number, and like, I got to start over, and then you're sweating and just freaking out because you can't get it and everybody's online. You got to jump them like this. Well, I did that, and what's interesting, this other guy on the next rack didn't have time to get his done, so he put it under my bed, my pillow, so it stuck out, right? And so I'm online, and the drill instructor comes by, and he looks at my rack. He's like, he looked at me. He's like, where are your camis? And I'm like, in my locker, sir. He goes, in your locker? So you're lying to me? No, sir, they're in my locker. You're lying to me. No, sir. And I had no clue what he was talking about. So he goes back and he goes, are these your camis? No, sir. Get in the classroom. So he started picking me out and putting me in the classroom constantly. It's like, what can I say? You can only say so much.
Did you say something to the other guy?
Yeah, I was like, why'd you do that? He goes, I didn't have time.
Huh.
So I got in trouble. So I started getting picked out because I was like, oh, he's one of the trouble guys. But it's because this other guy put it. Anyway, so that was frustrating for me. But
so were the camis like something to look forward to? Like after they tear you down, they start rebuilding you, and then they give you something to look forward to?
Yeah, and the first phase is totally tearing you down. And then they start rebuilding you from, learn how to do your rifle, how to shoot right, having responsibility, and then they build you up. And They, by the way, they go from calling you recruit to private. And you just like subtly realize, hey, they're calling us private now. Oh, that's interesting. And then even the last part, what's interesting is, for example, I had some college. And so they said, if you have college, we need to see some a transcript. And if you have like a certain number of hours, then we'll promote you to PFC. So private PFC Lance Corporal. And so I'd write my dad and say, I really need my transcript. Please send that as soon as possible. And so got it, boom, there you go. So I end up getting PFC for that. So at the last part, they start putting your your stripe on.
All right.
And if some people are private, some people had PFCs. And then on top of that, there was guys at the end the last week who had been a squad leader and had college. They were Lance Corporals. So they're E3s. So you start out day one as an E3 versus an E1. And by the way, these guys were a mix of reserves and full timers. So some people are going to stay in for the next 4 years there. They're not necessarily there, but some base somewhere active duty, and other people were reserves. So they were a mix of us.
And before I interrupted you about your MOS, when did you receive your MOS? Was that before?
Before you start, they just say you're this.
Okay.
And then because your unit's set up and everything, they know exactly where we're going to go after boot camp. But even after boot camp, what's weird about boot camp is, so I graduate, and I had family come in. Actually, my uncle who lived in California, who I mentioned earlier, who had a job offer and all that stuff. And I remember this drill instructor coming up to me, and of course I'm freaking out because it's a drill instructor. That's never good when they come to see you. And he's like, hey, Wood, how are you doing? And I'm like, sir? He goes, don't call me sir, I'm sergeant. Sergeant? And I forgot his last name, but you say sergeant, whatever. He goes, we're going to have a beer after. You want to get a beer? I'm just like, my head's just like spinning. Like, this guy's always like ripping me and I have to say sir to him and stuff like that. I was like, no, Sergeant, I have family. And he goes, oh, no problem. Well, that's too bad, man. And it's like, so he just left. It's just like, whoa. And then I went home, and flew home for probably 2 weeks, something like that. Came back, had to do a month school called MCT. It was like advanced infantry training. You do that for a month, and you have you basically do a lot of physical stuff, a lot more weapons training. They had this, forget my French, but this is what it's called, it's Mount Motherfucker. And you had to hump that, what they call hump. Right. And it's just like straight uphill. I mean, it's just, it's fun. I like the physicality of the Marine Corps, so I enjoyed that. And a lot of people didn't, but I liked it. And so we did that, and then you go to your MOS school. You go directly to your MOS school. And so I went to Santa Margarita, California, and that was where wire school was. Okay. And it wasn't, wire school was very easy, so it wasn't hard school, but that was another, I think it was 6 weeks of wire school. Okay. You do stuff, like you even climb poles. So you get like if you're a telephone company, they actually wear the little spikes on your leg, you tie that in, and then you climb. You got to climb a pole and be able to do some work on the pole, like 30 feet up. And so that was something.
There was one thing that you mentioned earlier that struck me as odd. You said that you guys started training in urban warfare. Mm-hmm. And could you describe that a little bit? I hear
it wasn't much. It wasn't much.
There wasn't any.
Yeah, there wasn't much, and so there was like half a day of kind of introduction to it.
Okay.
And it was just a little small town that they had. It was a fake town, like fake buildings and stuff like that.
Okay. You
just go around and do some, It was like for half a day.
Okay.
And they talked about it a little bit. Same when I went to the basic school back in 95, 96, that we had I think we had a day or two of urban warfare.
So it was like an introduction.
It was just an intro. It was nothing beyond that. Yeah.
So
and no sense of guerrilla warfare or anything like that. It was a little urban, but the rest was very conventional warfare.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So during this time between basic to your MOS school, did you, with the exception of the 2 weeks where you went home, did you have R&R at all? Did you get to go into the civilian populations?
Well, and that's one thing that was different. Boot camp, you didn't go anywhere, but after your month school, you got weekends off.
Okay.
At least part of the weekend. And then your MOS school, you get total weekends off. So, I mean, you had I think you had Saturday morning you had to do stuff, and then Saturday afternoon to Sunday evening you were able to go and do stuff. But MOS school is a little more full-time military, where you just have pretty much Friday night all the way to Monday morning off. And the rest was school and stuff.
What did you do during your time off?
Gosh, I don't know. There wasn't a lot to do. I mean, because one of the problems with these schools is you go and there's no car. You don't have a car. You have to get cabs and stuff like that. Right. So we took some trips a few times from the base from those two later schools. We took a couple trips. We went to Hollywood one time. One thing I did do, especially in my class, MOS class, I would come up to my family in Anaheim. I had an uncle and aunt and a couple of cousins, and I visited them on weekends a lot just to kind of get away. So I took the train up, and they were in just south of Anaheim.
Okay.
And so I did that and hung out with them. And so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Did you make any friendships while you're during this period from basic to MOS? Any lasting friendships at all?
Not really lasting. Nothing I have now.
Okay.
Yeah. I couldn't even tell you any names right now.
Okay.
Of any of those folks.
So after MOS, what then?
After MOS, I pretty much went to that would be spring of 90, summer of 90. Pretty much had the summer off. But that's when I went to the 2-week camp for the for my unit. I actually had to go for a weekend once or twice before that, and then I showed up. No, actually, take it back. No. I actually showed up to my unit. The first time I showed up was our 2-week school, and that's when I said, "Oh yeah, I'm here." And they're like, "You went through boot camp. You did all this school, pretty much 6 months of schooling. You don't have to be here. You've done all what you need to do this year."
Right.
And I was like, "I need some cash. I'm here already. I've been used to doing this. What's 2 weeks?"
Right.
And that was, I think, important for me because I didn't know these people. And I got to know them over that 2-week period. And then we had time off, and then all of a sudden, Desert Storm. And it's actually was really weird too, going back in time. I feel like I'm going back and forth in time here, but August 2nd is when the invasion happened.
Okay.
Well, August 2nd was the day I got out of boot camp.
Right.
And, well, maybe the day before, because I flew to Colorado. It's weird. I flew to Denver and had a layover in Denver before I went back to Oklahoma. Well, my mom is in Colorado, so she picked me up from Denver, and I spent the afternoon with them and then went back to the airport. Well, I remember sitting there watching TV, and I felt this weird kind of surreal moment because Iraq had just invaded Kuwait that day.
Mm-hmm.
It was all on TV, and I was just like, wait, I'm in the military now. This is just happening. They're talking about how we're going to respond to this thing. I was like, it was weird. I just had this weird, surreal moment. And you only get these every once in a while. You just know something's going to happen. And sure enough, something life-changing happened with me going over. But I was just like, whoa. And so I kind of got a panic attack on it or something. I don't know. It was just like, whoa, oh my God. It would be different if I wasn't all of a sudden in the Marine Corps, but I was just out of boot camp going, ah. So, of course, nothing would happen until later.
So, let's talk about how you were activated.
Mm-hmm.
You were back at OSU?
Okay, activated for the Gulf War.
Right.
Yeah, I was, because that was in 90, in through the summer. And then fall of 90, I was in school. And yeah, so it was probably, I think, one of the early drills, when they said, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. This was our Major Workman, I think. And we're like, whoa, okay, get your stuff in order. And that's when I did a will at home and stuff like that. I didn't realize that when I got to my unit, they would do another will and testament for me if I wanted to. And so, but I had to, they said, wait for a phone call. If you get a phone call, they'll tell you if you're active or not. So I got a phone call from my sergeant saying, we're active. You have, I think you had something like 96 hours or something like that. Get your butt in gear, get down here, 96 hours. Oh. And so I had to go to all my classes. I was like, I don't know what to do here. I don't know if I get an I or W, but I need to leave school. And a bunch of them gave me I's, so I had to come back. But it was like a year later to complete it. But anyway, so I left school early, and it was probably mid-semester, maybe even 3/4 into the semester, and showed up to the unit. They processed us and got on a bus, got on a plane, commercial airline, by the way, even though we had rifles. We had rifles, and we couldn't leave the plane, even though when we stopped a couple times, couldn't get off the plane. We just sat there. And I think we went to like Rome, and I had never been to Europe, and it was like, here's Rome, and I can't see it other than out the window. And Rome was very strange because Rome was a lot like San Diego. I don't know if you've ever flown into San Diego, but San Diego has a lot of these red kind of brick roofs. So does Rome. There's a lot of kind of brick roofs. I thought that was really weird. It's like, this is kind of San Diego.
Right.
It's like San Diego, isn't it? But then we go to Al Jubail, Saudi Arabia. Al Jubail it's an old Aramco oil base. So it's where they drilled oil. Well, actually, they housed people who were drilling oil and exploring for oil. So they had these barracks, and then they had Tent City. So we went in and to the barracks for about a day or two, and then we went into Tent City, and we waited there for about a week or so as our equipment was coming over.
And which Marine group were you? Which battalion?
I was Fox Battery 214, and we were attached with the 10th, with the, I'm trying to think what 10th. We're Fox Battery 214, I think 4th Battalion, 10th Marines, something like that.
Okay.
And I forgot to tell you, I keep going back and forth, but
Oh, that's fine.
I went to Algebel, but actually we spent some time in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
Right.
And we did that waiting in barracks for a while, and that's when we shipped our all our equipment over. And by the time we went to Algebel and waited there for about a week, the equipment finally got there. Right, so that's where we're kind of in transition there. And what's funny is we got all these briefings saying they're talking about how hot Saudi Arabia is. Oh my God, your wire will melt, and it's just you'll burn and blah blah blah. We got there, it was freezing cold because it was like December, January. I think it was December still, and no, it might have been late November even, but it was cold. And none of us were thinking about, because they weren't briefing us on cold, they were briefing us on hot. And we get there, of course it's a desert. When it's dark, it's cold, and then it warms up. But it was even colder in the day because it was in the winter. It's not necessarily hot. And then, over time it got really heated up. But, yeah, so we go to Algebel first. And then what we do is, for quite a while, we start doing maneuvers in just the middle of the desert, middle of nowhere, and doing a lot of shooting and practicing and stuff and moving around. And we did a whole bunch of that. And then finally, and at that point, they started doing the air war. And so we had all these sorties come over, and we could hear, even though we're a little ways away. And then when the ground war started, what we did is we kind of came back inward toward the coast and then started moving northward. And the 3-day war, it only took us that long to get up there. And what you do is you typically leapfrog. So what happens is you have your unit, and this unit starts shooting into an area. And what happens is infantry come in to that area after it's been, cleared out. They go in and they look for holes, they look for troops, the enemy that's still there, and they clear it. And when it's clear, they allow the artillery to jump up there, and then they set up, and then they start shooting again, clearing that area,
right.
And then the infantry comes in again. So just kind of a you just leapfrog all the way up to the front lines, and that's what we did. So, and before the ground war actually happened, I'm going back again, but a few days, I'm not sure, maybe a week or two earlier, we did what's called a hip shoot. And the hip shoot is where we go in right before the line, or right below the line, and so right at the edge of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, and we start shooting in to that area, and it's just. And what's crazy about that, I have a scene in my mind where that happened, and then we start packing up, and we go back, or we line up in this cool caravan of vehicles. Well, as a wireman, I was kind of a vagabond of the battery, so I would sit in the last vehicle to leave, because the last vehicle was what's called Antenna Hill. And what happened was, so here's the battery, and this is usually where I stay. I stay here a lot in this vehicle. These are vehicles. This is a Humvee. This is the platoon commander, I think 1st platoon commander. This is the forward direction control. This is the brain of the battery. And then this is what's called Antenna Hill, this whole area. I don't know if you guys can see this, the Antenna Hill.
Right.
And Antenna Hill is about anywhere from a half mile away. Okay. Antenna Hill is where the antennas are. This is where the reason my job was important as a wireman was to make sure these are wires, these are connections, was internal, keeps the communication internal.
Okay.
And that way the enemy can't hear us, and there's not a signal sent out, right? From here, we can coordinate. They can't hear us. The Antenna Hill is so we can coordinate with other batteries and other platoons and whatever. But it's half a mile away, so if they hear a signal and they can figure out where it is, they'll hit that and not the rest of the battery. That's the idea. That's why they're so far away.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, when we left, we'd be leaving like this way, right? Okay. And because Antenna Hill was so far away, it would be the last vehicle in the caravan, right? And so what happened is we would shoot in, and when we left, and we just picked up real quick to get the heck out of it. We got to pick everything up, throw it in your vehicle, go, right? I'm last. I'm looking out. And what's wild about this, and this was all sand and sand dunes and stuff like that, is that mortar fire started popping in right behind us. And so I had this beautiful array of these. It would just, this mortar would go and hit, and you couldn't really see the mortar itself. What you saw was it hit, and then a kind of a column of sand would pop up. Another column of sand would pop up and pop up like this. So it was just like dancing sand behind me. And I had the best view because I was sitting there in my vehicle. I had my M203 sitting there, my helmet and everything. I was just sitting here. Got there because I had to run to Antenna Hill, by the way, and catch them as they were coming this way. I was running to them, trying to get in, get ready, and get in this caravan. And these columns just pop up, and I just saw them. I was like, oh my God, because they basically finally the mortars walked into where we were. We would have been hit big time.
Right.
And I saw them just. So I still remember that. It was pretty crazy. It was just real intense. It's like we just saved ourselves by getting the heck out of there in time because they were just in front of me. Anyway, so that's one story. Another story that was interesting. Let's say I'll do this other story. Okay, so another story. We're actually in the ground war and in the 3-day war, and it was like right at the beginning. It was right in the morning. I was at Antenna Hill, which I do a lot, and that's why I travel with those guys. I was coming, there was a hill right here. And I don't know if you can see this, but there was a hill right here. So this is probably about a half mile, 3/4 mile away. And it was still dark by the time I was here, and I get over this hill, and the light is just starting to come up a little bit. And so what happened was these guys over here were in a vehicle. There was a vehicle right here. It was my CO and his armed guard. And he had I think an M60 or something like that, the guard, and then the CO had like an M9. And so they had this vehicle. I come up and they say, "Halt, who goes there?" And I'm just like, and I see these people by this car, and I just throw my arms up. I was like, Wood, the wireman. And then I heard this. This was like, God. Well, I heard this click, click, by the way. It's click, click, who goes there? And I'm like, with the wireman, and they were like, "God damn it, Wood! I almost shot your ass!" And I was like, "Oh, whoa!" And by the way, the guard had rolled off. He was like on the front of the vehicle of the Humvee, and he had rolled off with his machine gun pointing at me, and the bodyguard said that. He was just that far from shooting me.
That's intense. And
my heart was at the time just going boom, 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 boom. Okay, and so I went on.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was intense. That was intense. I mean, my own people were gonna shoot me, and the head, the CO, the major, the highest ranking guy shooting me. Whoa. So, let's see. There was another time where, okay, so. It was really dark. It was probably in the middle of the night, I think. And so I was over here. I usually only worked this platoon. In the second platoon, they did their own thing. Well, I was over here. They were having major problems, and I didn't realize it. I got called over to do this because I don't usually get called over, so I thought it was odd. So I started working on their stuff, and their phones and stuff were not working right. And then I get a call going, "We have problems over in first platoon." And it's like, I was just there. Well, the CEO wants you now. He's wondering where you are. I was like, okay, well, let me finish this. They're like, they want you now. Right. Oh, crap. So I go and I run and see it. I knew the layout on the battery. So I know that you can follow the wire back. So it was so dark that I hold the wire like this, right? So I'm just like, and I have my M203 on my back. And I'm just like, I have my flak jacket, my helmet, and I'm just looking at the ground, trying to keep from falling in the sand, right? And I'm holding this wire. And it's thick wire because it's probably 8, 9, 10 strands of this thinner wire. So it's probably like this thick. You're just like, and then all of a sudden I go boom, and I fall on my back, and I see this shadow, and all of a sudden I hear this laugh, like ha 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 ha. Well, it was the XO, who's like second in command. And the guy's like probably 6'5", 6'6", real big, and I just went like this, and he was just standing there like ha ha ha, and he's like, "Wood, you get your ass over the first platoon. They're looking for you." I was like, "Sir, I'm getting there. Sir, I'm getting there." It's like, "Ha ha ha ha, get over there." So I get over there, and then so I go over this first platoon. They're like, "They're looking for you." It's like, I know. And so I run down here, and there was another hill. I kind of go over it, and the CO comes up to me, and he starts looking at me. He's like, "What? Where in the hell have you been?" It's like, "Sir, I was in second. I don't give a damn where you were at." And starts chewing me out, like, you could kill us here, and you know where this is. And it was like, that is the line. That right there's Kuwait. That's where the enemy is at. You're here. You better take this stuff seriously. I'm just like, yes, sir. Yes. It's not like I wasn't taking it seriously. It was just like they were panicking, and I didn't know what was going on. So I finally get over here after the CO chews me out and goes, and he wasn't happy. The XO was just like, thought it was funny, I think. And the CO was just like really pissed, real serious, which really scared me because I was already worried about and stressed, and I knew everybody was stressed about what was going on, but he stressed me out more than anybody at that point because I was just like, now the CO's chewing me out and trying to instill into me how serious this is, right? I'm just like, whoa, okay. So I get to the first platoon, and the other wireman comes in and is like, "Where have you been?" I was called over on the other battery or other platoon, and they told me to come over. Well, what happened is there's these vehicles who do GPS, and they ran right through our pause, ran and ripped up all the wire, just tangled it up and ripped it. Imagine a car vehicle, the tires just all of a sudden rolling it, and we had no connection, which is one of the most panicky things you have. Is we can't talk to our guns, we can't shoot. And so he was out there panicking, trying to run this wire, and he goes, "Well, okay, there's nothing we can do about it now. I've already run the wire. Just check it for me." So I went and checked it for him and came back. Went back to the platoon. We had a hiding hole already. This captain was chewed out. Found out it was chewed out by the major. Well, the captain, then he chews us out. And he's just screaming. And the next, he was talking about, for example, he goes, your first job, we might be getting hit right there, but if the wire's down, that's your job. I don't care if you die or not, you will get that wire up. That's your job. I don't care. And he just started yelling at us hard. And the next day, these gun buddies were like, we call them gun buddies, so the guys that do artillery and stuff. They're like, "We heard you guys just getting screamed out. What happened?"
Yeah.
We could kind of hear your conversation, but not the whole thing. What was going on? So we told them stuff. It was just,
Yeah.
So, let's see. Another one was, okay, so this is the third day of the war. And the third day, I was just beat. I had no sleep for 96 hours. No sleep whatsoever. Finally, I have time. Things had quieted down. We were situated. I was like, now I can sit down. Because they're always just having you do something. So this is a Jeep. And, I found a tire. I took my stuff off, some of my stuff, and laid it over. And I put my head in my tire and started relaxing. And when you close your eyes, you start feeling this burn in your eyes just because you hadn't been sleeping. It just burned. Yet it feels so good at the same time. Just finally, right? And then the squawk box goes on. Wood. Gun one's down. Wood. Gun one's down. I'm like, I just finally, like not even 5 minutes, I'm just, relax. The gun one's down. So I jump up, and you follow the wire. Basically, you go up, And what you do is you feel the wire, and it was pitch black. You could not, I could barely see beyond my hands, because what people don't understand there, you got the oil well fires. I don't know if you heard about those. You got these oil derricks that are on fire. They're burning the oil, so it's just pure smoke going up, dark black smoke. There was no moon. It was windy, so there was a lot of sand being blown up. You could not see beyond your hands. So I was holding this wire just to see. So, and what you do anyways, I was holding it and just my eyes closed, because I was trying to feel for all the cuts in the wire. Where's a cut? And then boom, I hit tape. And that's not always a good thing, because what happens is a lot of times these folks, if you don't know what they're doing, they're just sticking this together and then taping it real loosely. So it felt like loose. I was like, oh, okay. So I felt it was bad tape, and then I untape it. It was just stuck together. And see, what happens is the wire has like hard metal wire, and that's just for rigidity, just to keep it tense. And then you have copper, which is what actually talks. And you can, and copper kind of gets brittle too, but it gets but you tie it together, basically. You tie it together so it'll talk. And I basically had, partly because it was cold, I couldn't do my job if I had the tops of my fingers covered. So I had these gloves that looked like I was a pauper or something, but it basically was these kind of garden gloves that were brown garden gloves that were cut off at the fingertip. I cut them off so I could actually do my job and feel stuff, but my hands were warm. And so I would feel, but what I noticed too is that, in remembrance of this, I had calluses and places where like kind of would look like blood spots. It's because this is where the metal would like hit the end of my fingers. And so I had just these little red spots all over my fingers from all these kind of, I don't know what they're called, corpuscles, or I don't know, but they were just like, what's where I cut myself. I cut myself so many times doing this wire. But anyway, so my hands were just, they would hurt and stuff. Anyway, so I would tie it, and you cut it off and tape it right. There's a way you tape it and stuff that's tight. And then it's like, go to the next one. Same thing. It's like, oh, okay, this is bad. Now, if you have too many of these, that means this wire is bad anyway. You can only repair a wire so many times before it's not going to work real well. So you've got to rerun the wire. So it's about 4 times I figured I need to probably rerun the wire. I'll fix it, but then I need to just say screw it and come back. Test it and then come back and stuff. So what I did is I did another one. It's like, oh, another one, here. And you just feel it. I'm doing this in the dark, blind. I'm just feeling. So that I'm just like this, feeling the wire. This is where you get poked a lot because you get, okay. And you got to kind of cut it just right and stuff like that. Well, I got to my 4th one, and I was like, oh, okay. I'm going to have to rerun this wire. I'll fix it, and I need to go back. So what I did is, I'm probably up about right here, and because I started up here and I'm feeling it. And that's a ways. I mean, it's a good little walk. And all of a sudden, I heard this countdown. Well, first I heard this, who goes there, but in Arabic, right? What I found out later was who goes there, but it was in Arabic, and I was like, what? And I heard it came from this part of the battery, this over here. I'm like, what? And I'm just, okay, I got to fix this. And I'm on my knees fixing this and feeling it, and I kept looking, but I couldn't see anything. And I heard this countdown, basically in Arabic, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Got to 1, and went to 0. All of a sudden, I started seeing this flashing lights, kind of dancing, flashing lights that were just in gun fire, machine gun fire. From both sides. I mean, it was just... And so... I stood up like, oh my God, okay, I'm done. I stood up and I heard this. It was basically a bullet with no name, as they say, went and hit this gun here and ricocheted. And the next morning they were like saying that the bullet ricocheted into, there was this kind of a ammo pit over here. But I heard this thing, it was like this close to my head. And I was like, whoa. I was like, I got to get back. And so I started hightailing it back. And I get to my fighting hole where there was wire there, and Lance Corporal Barr was sitting there, and he was like, "Dude, we're getting hit." And I'm like, "I know we're getting hit." He goes, "Oh shit, we're getting hit. Get down." And I was like, "Well, there was another guy in my hole as well. I didn't even know who it was." I was like, "I can't get in there with this other guy. It was a 2-man fighting hole." I was like, "Barr, you got to tell him to get, or get out." And he wouldn't get out. I was like, "Barr, tell him to get out." And Barr was like, "Yeah, get out." And so he scampered off. I jumped in. He was like, "Man, we're getting hit." I'm like, I know. And so I got the wire and I had to jump out there and rerun this whole wire. And what I found out, this is what happened. Remember I talked about the leapfrogging?
Right.
Well, what happens, we leapfrog in front of the front lines. So what happened is we were going so fast that instead of clearing the stuff out, we ran in front. And it was all dark. I mean, this is incredibly dark. We were doing this by GPS and by compasses, trying to get to where we're at. So somehow, the clearing out of the Iraqis in these holes, they found Iraqis behind us.
Oh.
So we were in front of the front lines.
Right.
We were in enemy territory, essentially, doing all this.
Wow.
And we didn't realize until all this happened the next morning. So that's what happened there. That was pretty crazy.
You guys not have night vision equipment?
Well, that's very interesting too. Now that you see all these guys with these goggles and stuff like that, we had like maybe 2 or 3 of those. And it got so dark that our driver ended up getting one. But it was so dark it was just grainy because those things look kind of like a green.
Right.
And I think the night vision goggles are amazing. When I got to see them a couple times, was I looked up and I looked at the stars and the stars just filled in. It's like now that you get these dark spaces, but this is just filled in with all these stars. It was amazing. All green, of course, but green and white and stuff like that. But anyway, he's like, this is not helping me. It's all grainy. I don't see anything because there's just no light. I mean, at least the stars gives you a little light. I mean, there was just no light for him. So the captain would be here with a compass. And I mean, we just had coordinates. We just had a compass. He got us place to place. Our major was amazing. He got us from place to place with a compass.
Wow.
It was crazy. And a map. Of course, he had a little light, and he was like, "Okay, we got to go 45 degrees this way, and blah blah so far." And it was just, he really got us to where we needed to be. It was pretty crazy. But
so during this incident, you stumbled upon the enemy essentially while you were trying to repair the wire, and you had to rerun the wire while you were under attack.
Well, and I wasn't. It was this infantry was behind us, right? So I was over here. Infantry, who were supposed to be up here, or gone already, was behind us, and I just happened to be out because I was trying to do the wire, and so this is when this bullet just went from went off this way, and there's probably bullets going other ways, but this is the one I noticed that so it's like, wow, that was one of my close calls with death right there.
Absolutely.
Other than the CO shooting me, but yeah. So I had 2 pretty close calls with death right there in Desert Storm, at least. We did have a time where we were up front, and I was not an FO, but we're forward observers and stuff like that, and they were making pot shots at the enemy, and so they were just like pop, people falling and stuff like that. So it was pretty crazy too.
So, what was the nature of the enemy? Can you describe the?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. We, other than being far away, we did have one time we were going forward, and we had them knock on our door because we're in this caravan, and one time it was weird because we're in a caravan and there was all these other units that were on the side just stopped because they couldn't see, they were lost, and we just kept trudging along forward past them, and we had this knock on our door, and on mine and on the captain's. And he unzipped his because by the way, Humvees were just canvas on the side. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah.
That's why the IEDs today were so bad, because it was just ripping through canvas. But that's what we had. So you zip to open the window, which is just plastic, and there's a Saudi or a Iraqi going, "I give up." He's like, just go back there. Just go back that, keep walking, and somebody did to me, just walk. So.
Well, I wanted to ask about that because you see videos of the enemy just surrendering whenever you guys rolled in. So I guess that was your one encounter with that.
Yeah.
What about the civilian populations? Did you encounter them at all?
Not really. I mean, we did in Saudi a little bit, just because there was a little marketplace that we went to, and a couple marketplaces. There was a marketplace in El Jebel, and there was a marketplace. I'm not sure where the other marketplace is. I only know I ended up buying rugs in Saudi Arabia, a couple rugs, and I still have one rug. Gave it to my dad. My dad passed away, and so I ended up getting it back. But so I had that rug. I bought a rug. I think I bought 2 rugs, and of course we got toiletries and stuff like that in this little marketplace. And I think actually that might have been after the war. I think that one was after the war. There was one. We went to market a couple places, 3 places I think, and so one before, one kind of almost right before the ground war, and then one after the ground war, just buying basics. But the last one had, in Saudi, or it might have been, was it Saudi or Kuwait? It might have been when we came back to Saudi. I think when we came back to Saudi. That's where I bought the rug and whatnot. And one cool thing we did was, it was weird. I remember I was digging a fighting hole, for the captain, for the captain and for the dock and for the gunny. This really big hole, and they had a tent over it and stuff. It was pretty elaborate. Of course, I was doing that, and then I had another, I think PFC, Lance Corporal helping, and it was funny. I think I was PFC at the time. And anyway, they had this thing called the Love Boat, and they were looking for single privates to come over to do the Love Boat. And I was just like, I didn't know what this was. They made it sound like it was a vacation, a lot of women there. That's why they wanted single people. And I was like, okay. And so they called these people up that they wanted to do. And the guy said, why aren't you over there? I'm like, well, I'm digging this hole. I'm like, get over there. So I get over there. Somehow they ended up picking me. I got picked. So there was like 4 or 5 of us from the unit who were all single privates, and like, are you single? Yeah. And then we went, and they took us. They were like, okay, pack up real quick because you're going to go to Bahrain. So we went to Bahrain. So we went way south, and I'm trying to remember the Air Force town that we went to. But there's a town that's really big, and it's where the Air Force was. And they had these apartments that had TVs and everything. I was just like, what? We went through one of them, and I was like, I can't believe they get all this stuff. This is crazy. I mean, we're out sleeping in the sand on cots, and they're in nice apartments. So, okay, anyway. So we get transferred, and we drive across the longest bridge in the world, by the way, from Saudi Arabia to a little island called Bahrain. Bahrain is one of the banking capitals of the Middle East.
Okay.
And just filled with banks, and it's a
Very
little tea
wealthy.
town. Yeah, very wealthy. It's also the burial capital of the Middle East, too. So it's supposed to be real sacred ground, and so people would take their dead and bury them in Bahrain. Right. I don't know all the reasons for that, but I actually saw a burial site, and I went to a museum and stuff, and that was interesting. What was funny about it, the only women were there were just like a handful of military women who weren't that good looking or anything. It's just like, okay, and it was almost all guys. Right. But what was cool about it is I remember I got a room. I was friends with, got paired with a guy named Arvizo, and we had a shower, which I hadn't really told you about the showers yet, but it was like it's like, wow, we got a shower. This is crazy. And a real shower with soap, everything. All right. So let me go back real quick. I didn't have a shower for 6 weeks at one point. And what we did was, and this was when we were out in the field, we went to battalion. They said, hey, take off your clothes. So it was a line of guys just taking off their clothes. And they said, and they go over to where it was, and there's like maybe half a dozen of these, and you got in line and stuff like that. And you waited for these half a dozen drips of where there's PVC pipe, and they pumped water through it, but they said you get 30 seconds of water, So first what you do is with the drip, there's a little bit of a drip, you take the drip and you lather up. And then you get 30 seconds to rinse that off. So be quick about it. So we just, and that was our first shower after 6 weeks. And my next shower was this Bahrain trip, right? And so that was a real shower. I soap, but I just, I mean, Arviza and I both, when we went to the shower separately, different times, we both took a long time in the shower. It was just like, oh my God, I'm in the shower. I'm just cleaning up. It was so amazing. It was probably one of my best showers in my life. But,
I can imagine.
Yeah, it was amazing. So, and that was a few weeks after this last shower, I just noticed, so the showers were nice. So every day I took them. And the days I was there, I think we're only there like 3 or 4 days. But what was interesting, they had this little bar so you could actually drink alcohol. In Saudi Arabia, you couldn't drink alcohol. There was no alcohol anywhere. But in the ship, there was alcohol. So the guys were drinking alcohol, for the money that they had. They were calling their family, collect, because you had to call collect. One of these guys was just like on the phone just constantly with his girlfriend, just constantly. Probably a huge, huge bill, because my aunt said that I would call her and she knew it was like a $50 right there.
Yeah.
And then it would accrue. It was real expensive. So anyway, it's funny, I found out later, Arvizo and I went and looked for culture. So we went and we toured the downtown, we got a cab and looked around. It was really cool. There's 3 types of women we noticed. There was women who had everything covered, and they would sit there in the marketplace, their legs crossed, just sitting there waiting for their husbands. And the husbands could shop, and they were just sitting there waiting, I guess. And then there was women who looked like nuns. I mean, you could see their faces, you could see their hands. And then we just all of a sudden saw this lady in a red dress. You could see her knees. You see her elbows and everything. It was like, whoa, with her, she looked like a husband and a child, her child. And I was like, whoa, okay. That was different than these other people. Only one, but all the other women, there were a lot of other women. And it was very, very fascinating place. So we went to a museum and went to some stores, and we would in the morning work out with this guy who was a triathlon athlete, and we did that for like, I think 3 days, 4 nights, something like that. And
so it was
a
like
great little break.
R&R?
Yeah, I guess it was an R&R that we got picked for, and so it was great. Bahrain, got to see Bahrain. Everyone else, the other guys, other Marines went and bar hopped the whole time.
Yeah.
They went to all these bars, and that's all they. As I found out, that's all they did. One of my friends, he went and he actually took his cover. He went over to the Russian ship and got drunk over there with the Russians, and they switched caps. So he got a Russian cap, and they got his cover, and so that was kind of funny.
Yeah, lots of vodka. I would imagine.
Lots of vodka. But that was a fun trip. I'll remember that one. And we went back, and I remember being told, it was the end of the war, where it was because I think it was Desert Storm and Desert Keep the. It was, what was it? Desert Storm, Desert Keep the Peace, and Desert Shield. Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Desert Keep the Peace. Something like that. I forget. Desert Storm, Shield. Shield was either, it might have been Shield, then Storm, then Peace, I think. So I think we ended up getting like 1 ribbon for each of those campaigns. It was kind of funny. So Desert Keep the Peace was us just sitting there, right? Kind of just waiting. And so it was a lot of just like, when are we going home? Well, we heard we're going to go home in so many weeks, Oh, we're going to go home. It just seems like we kept getting pushed off. We're going to go home, and just like every few days, it was like, there's rumors that we're going to go home at this time or another, and we're just sitting there. I mean, we played some soccer and a lot of sitting down and read books that came to us in the mail. A lot of what we call pogey bait, where people were like sending us baked goods and things like that. I got cookies and stuff from home one time. I got a lot of old letters that took 30 days to get to me, old newspaper clippings. One newspaper clipping was really weird. It was after everything, and it said that they expected some like 40,000 deaths of Americans in the Desert Storm part of it. About 40,000 deaths. It was amazing. Of course, we only had like 169. Most of those were from a God, what do you call it? It was like a certain missile. I can't remember the name of the missile, but the missile hit the barracks and killed most everybody, and then it's only a handful of other people died. So, and we did see shells when we were going through. We did see shells of these. I'm trying to remember the name of them, but it was a certain type of round, and it would say like "Kill Saddam" on the side. You could still see little pieces of it.
Oh, yeah.
Kill Saddam, and death to the Iraqis and stuff like that. It was just like they would on each one of them they would say something mean, and then you see little remnants of it. It just scattered all over the desert, little pieces of shrapnel and.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned a lot of sleep deprivation. What other factors were difficult for the adjustment to a combat situation?
Well, the sleep deprivation was mainly during the 3 days war. The other times we had plenty of sleep. I mean, we still had to get up like at 5. It didn't matter. But, when it got dark, they would kind of let us go to sleep because there's nothing else to do. And there wasn't much light, and we'd be losing our flashlights. They didn't want us wearing down our batteries. So pretty much sundown, we were able to go to sleep. We could, I used my light a lot to read. I did a lot of reading. So went through a lot of books just laying around. Because after a while, after Desert Keep the Shield, I mean, we just did nothing. And it was just, what can we do here, In fact, they were around the main CO base, where CO and XO lived. Basically, the troops created a bunch of sandbags. We had all these sandbags brought in. We'd fill them up. And they created like this whole kind of barracks for them. And it was like a regular barracks, but it was just sandbags. And then they had this little place for athletics, so you can like do different, like lift sandbags and lift them, and so people go out and work out right there, and just full of sandbags. I went and ran a little bit. They allowed me to run. They were like, for some reason, I was the only one who could run because I was on a college cross country team, so they allowed me to run around the paws. My problem is I didn't have any good running shoes. I just had boots, and the boots would give me sores on my feet. And then so one time I had to bring the stupid idea of not wearing shoes. Well, it's soft sand, but there's rocks in the sand. So I just tore up my feet one time going around. So I only did that so many times. But
so during this downtime, I understand that hindsight's 20/20, and you do have a PhD in political science. But during the time, what were your impressions of the war?
During the time,
Yeah.
in what way? I mean, like politically or
Just whatever strikes your fancy.
I was
Politically or in general.
I was just told, I was a Marine. I was just told to do it, so I did it. It was like, okay. I mean, I was scared, and I didn't necessarily want to go. I wasn't rah-rah about it. I know it was kind of weird with some guys who were like, oh, I want to go to get my ribbons and whatever. And I was like, do you really just want to go? I mean, I don't know if I really just, I'm not looking forward to going, but I will go because I'm told to, because I'm
You weren't
following
exactly
orders.
gung-ho about it.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
What were your impressions about, for example, I'm assuming that you knew that Hussein used, chemical weapons on the Kurds and things like that. What were your impressions on that? Did that give you an initiative to go at all?
Oh, no. I mean, it just scared me. I didn't know what to think about it. But, now, I mean, hindsight, I can give you a different perspective. But then I was just like, okay, whatever. But,
What's your perspective now on it?
Oh, that's interesting. It's probably one of the reasons I got into political science. The more I read about it, the more I was like, what's going on here? Because I actually, when I graduated, I decided to be an officer. And I think that was probably stupid in hindsight, because I thought somehow I could make a difference. I'm just weird in that I always think that it's meaningful for me to make a difference. And so I thought, I can make a difference. No, I was just another low man on a different totem pole, And I didn't really enjoy it. I actually hated it. I hated just the whole setup of it, and I ended up getting out early and going back to school. And the officer side of things, it just wasn't for me. And but the more I thought about it, learned about it, and read about it, what I found was, for example, the whole gassing of his own people was not true, He didn't believe the Kurds were his own people.
Right.
He was gassing people who he didn't feel were his own people. And nobody claims the Kurds. Nobody likes the Kurds except the Kurds and the Americans. And the Americans like the Kurds only because the Kurds like them, because it was like the Pawnee Indian back in the day of when we were attacking the tribes. The Pawnee, no one liked the Pawnee, so the Pawnee said, well, we'll align with the white man, and so we'll get clout with the white man, and then the Pawnee got screwed anyway. So, so the Kurds aligned with us because no one liked them, thought, well, hey, you'll help us. They even did a survey of those folks, of the Kurds, the Sunni, and this, of course, is the second Gulf War, right? The Sunni, the Shiite, and the Kurds. It was only the Kurds loved us 80 to 20%, right? They were like, we're freedom fighters, 80%. The Kurds and the Sunni and the Shiite, 20% thought we're freedom fighters. 80% were occupiers, right? So yeah, it depends who you talk to on whether they wanted us there or not. Yeah, if you talk to the Kurds, which is the minority, then of course they wanted us. So you talked about the Shiite and the Sunni, they didn't want us there. Especially the Sunni didn't want us there because they were in power, and they weren't the majority. The Shiite are majority, and they kind of initially wanted us, but then they wanted us out because they wanted to rule the roost after. So they didn't want us there. So gassing his own people, he didn't want to do that necessarily. I mean, his people were the Sunni.
Well, just in general, gassing people.
Sure.
I mean, that's a terrible atrocity in modern
but
warfare.
think about it. How do you know that we gas the people? There was a cartoon. It was a funny cartoon. It was like, Bush was like, we know you gas the people. We have the receipts. We know we get you at gas. We know you have chemical weapons. We have the receipts. Yeah, we sold this to them because during the Iran war back in the 80s, we backed Iraq 100% because we didn't like the Iranians, and all of a sudden they were the enemy. Back when they invaded Kuwait. In fact, from what I've read, is that when this all initially happened, when Iraq was going to invade, they went to our ambassador and were like, do you mind if I invade Kuwait? I mean, it's ours anyway. Saddam said, it's ours anyway. And really it was at one time. The British cut this out and to cut them off the Persian Gulf, right? And that's what happened. It really was Iraq at one time. Well, he did these slant wells, which we're doing right now, these slant wells. There's a slant well, the Kurds, the Kuwaitis did a slant well into Iraq and said, look, you're stealing our oil, so therefore we have the rights, we want to take back our country. And the ambassador, our ambassador, was like, we don't get into Middle Eastern affairs like that. We don't care. We didn't go, you got to understand, we didn't go because of Kuwait. We went because of Saudi Arabia. See, because we signed an agreement in 1946, the United States signed an agreement in 1946 with the Saudis. The House of Saud, we signed an agreement that said, look, you give us access to your oil. And they said, okay, fine. You reciprocate by protecting us, our House of Saud, from any invaders. Right. So we don't have to have a military. You'll come and save us. So what happened is there was this whole rumor that the Iraqis were massing at the border. What's funny is they found photos that there was no evidence of Iraqis amassing the border of Saudi Arabia. Not at all. We used it as an excuse to go over there. And so it was because of Saudis. We were protecting Saudis, not necessarily Kuwaitis, because they were worried they were going to get attacked too. And then we were worried because then they would control the oil. So there was a whole lot of stuff going on there. So that's what we did. And I've read all this. I've been pushed to read all this because, why were we over there? What was I doing there? Was it meaningful for me almost to die? Was it meaningful for me to do that? And I would argue no.
Well, you described earlier that your time in Iraq was a life-changing experience. Would you mind expanding on that a little bit?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things that it was, anytime you have camaraderie, I mean, if you, for example, if I go and talk to a Marine about boot camp, we had camaraderie already. It was a tough experience. Even though they went to boot camp at a very different time, we have that common experience. And we could see eye to eye and say, oh, hey, we have that in common. What else do we have in common? We build from that. Same with the Gulf War or war itself. You could argue that people kind of like, oh, you've been, like, some of my students who have been to the recent war, they find out I've been in the Gulf and like, oh, okay, you kind of get me now, right? Because it's hard to get people who have been there. It's hard to explain being in that situation where you're being shot at, you're shooting at people, you're feeling you have this high level of adrenaline and anxiety and whatnot the whole time. You realize that 40% of the guys coming over now have post-traumatic stress disorder, TBI, traumatic brain injury. And if there's reasons for that. You put anybody in that level of stress for that amount of time, whether you just killed people point blank or not, you have a good chance of having brain issues,
Absolutely.
And I just got a letter about a month ago from the VA saying there's a presumption that if you're in the Gulf War and you have certain symptoms, you have something called CMI, a chronic multi-symptom illness.
Okay.
And that is something I'm investigating, going through the VA now about, because, for example, I have eczema, which means that I have places in my head that constantly kind of turn into boils and zit-like things, and they pus and they bleed, and then after a while, I can't grow hair there, all over my head. I even had a vet the other day. I was like, "Did you get eczema from the war?" I've had people say that to me before. I was like, "No," because it's so far away in time. I'm just like, "No." But now they're like, "Oh yeah, that's from the war, right?" Well, the CMI,
stress involved in eczema.
It's not just stress. It's not, well, maybe it's stress, but that's one of the symptoms. It's all these under the radar things. So, irritable bowel syndrome, having joint issues, eczema, really bad eczema. These are all examples of things that are kind of under the radar. You don't think, but you put them all together. It's called CMI. And that's something they're just finding now, that there's a presumption. If you're in the Gulf War, you have these things, you probably have CMI. And you'll get disability for that at a certain level. So I'm going to go through the system and see what happens. But this was 20 some years ago. And it's not surprising. You know how long it took for them to figure out Agent Orange? And start paying people for
2005,
that?
2005, right?
Well, it was 92. It was
Okay,
92.
yeah.
So 20 some years later, but it takes some decades to kind of finally go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, you have this. After people are having ulcers, if you're in the Gulf War, you have a high chance of Lou Gehrig's disease, for example. Even post-traumatic stress disorder, they never called that anything until after the Gulf War. I mean, it was around this time, in the early 2000s, they started saying this is what it is. They used to call it shell shock. They call it all sorts of things, not identifying what it, Gulf War is Gulf War illness. Well, the Gulf War illness, CMI is under the Gulf War illness designation. So they're finding that people all of a sudden are seeing this stuff years later. So it's stuff that you either internalize or whatnot, but some of it's just like your body's being attacked. It's like it's hacking its own system, like it's out of balance, and so it's
Well,
and they don't know exactly.
I was certainly aware of PTSD and symptoms of that nature, but I was not aware of the eczema.
Which is just a symptom under CMI.
Right.
It's one of those.
So, can you describe your transition back into peaceful society after being in a conflict? What was your first days back on U.S. soil like, for example?
Well, I certainly wanted to kiss the ground when I got home, but I didn't because I felt like it would be embarrassing, but I wanted to. It was weird. I mean, wearing civilian clothes again and not being in a desert was kind of odd. You're just so used to it. This is your life now, right? That's what, you get in a situation like, this is life now. And that radically changed for me. Going back to school and really kind of realizing that no one understands your experience. And unless they're a vet, they just don't get you.
Well, let's talk about OSU. So you went back to OSU, presumably on the GI Bill, or you were still active?
Yes, I was still on the GI Bill.
Okay.
It was a reserve GI Bill, and the money sucked back then. But
All right.
after 9/11, they signed it, and it went way up.
Well, it's interesting that you left OSU, went to the Marine Corps, went to war, and then went back to OSU. What changes did you observe, both in yourself and in the student body?
It's really hard to say.
Well, you mentioned nobody gets you.
Nobody gets me. I think I started building up this a little more critical understanding of what the government's doing and what, like the government will throw you into harm's way and for their interests and not yours, but they build it up as your interest. They say, "Oh, we got to do this," and they admit it was for oil. Wait, so why are we using so much oil then that we get ourselves in a mess like that for cheap oil? Really? Is that all? And then it makes me, I tell you, in 2003, March 2003, when that was, right? When that was significant. It's the second Gulf War. It was Iraq, right?
Right.
I couldn't get out of bed. I was like, it's happening all over again. It's happening all over again. I was so depressed by that. I was just so depressed and angry that we're doing that again. We're doing it again. And the whole thing was Afghanistan. All of a sudden we're going to Iraq. Why? Real shaky circumstances. Why are we doing that? And it's still shaky today because look at the 9/11 report that said, look, Iraq had nothing to do with this, and Saddam had nothing to do with this. You realize Saddam had a third party meet with an Al-Qaeda person in Poland. The Al-Qaeda said it was just so turned off by the Saudi person. They were like, we can't work with you. Why? Because the Saudi guy, or the Iraqi guy, Saddam's third party, and them, they're secular.
Right.
They're not, they're religious, but yet they kind of believe in separation of church and state. They have to. They're a minority on top of this majority of the Sunnis, and they cannot be overly religious or that would fracture things. Al-Qaeda, they wear religion on their sleeve. They exude, they probably sweat, Muslim religion and jihad,
Right.
And so they just sniffed them out real quickly, like, you're not real, we can't count on you. And so they went out and had no agreement. They couldn't deal with each other. And so maybe there was a little bit of a snooping around for that, but there was no reason for us to get stuck in Iraq. And you got to understand, when I went over, we had 500,000 people from 30, 40 different nations, a very broad array of folks,
right,
with a very narrow mission. The narrow mission is to kick Saddam and his troops out of Kuwait. That's it. Kick them out, and then we're done. And a lot of people blame Bush Sr. for not getting Saddam in the first place. Shoot at Saddam. Well, what does it mean getting rid of Saddam? It means occupying a nation, right? Well, so we go next time, and we have smaller, 150,000 people, very few other countries chipping in financially or physically, and then we have this huge, broad, not only occupying, but not quite sure what we're doing here. We're fighting terrorism. And we wonder why we got bogged in there, and we're just finishing this stuff. We just finished this, right? And it's real frustrating to see that you're putting all these people in harm's way, doing all this stupid stuff, killing our people. Had I been 10 years younger, I could have been over there and maybe dead, And yeah, it's a lot less than when I went in, and a lot less than Vietnam, but we still did it for no reason. We already critiqued, when I was over, you realize they got rid of something called the Vietnam syndrome. The Vietnam syndrome there was a lot of shyness to go into war. That's why Nicaragua and Salvador was all kind of undercovers, because the American populace couldn't stomach that stuff. It was like, we're not going. And then we finally went, and they just kind of pushed us in, and it was like a super quick victory. And Bush's poll ratings just shot out the roof, the highest poll ratings in the history of poll ratings at the time, right? But it was short-lived because the economy just fell over, and then he just, boom. And so after 9/11, you realize Bush's poll ratings went higher than Bush Sr.'s, highest ever recorded. I don't know if you knew that. And did you know Bush's numbers went to the third lowest in history at the end of his presidency? Just like 1 point over Nixon and Truman. His poll numbers were that bad. And it's because the whole execution of this thing was bad. I mean, you did demilitarization of the Iraqi army. What you did is you take the arms out. You take all you just get rid of this military. Well, a lot of the equipment disappears because it goes right into terrorist hands. A lot of these military people don't have a job anymore, so they get recruited. All of a sudden now they're the part of the jihad as well. They're angry because, and then you have this Sunni who lost their power, so they're all angry. They invited Al Qaeda in. They're like, hey, come on in. Let's screw this whole thing up for the Americans, It just became a total mess. And there was no reason to go to Saudi Arabia. What we did is we pulled Al Qaeda from Afghanistan and put them in Iraq. They invited them in, And then they had these elections where the Sunni, we're getting screwed here. We're not going to be part of this election business. And so they didn't show up. They protested. The Shiite took a huge majority, which they should have anyway, because a democracy would allow them to. The Kurds took way higher percentage of seats in parliament than they should have. And then now the Sunnis are definitely screwed over and pissed off because they're out of government now. And so they're the ones that just kind of kept this terrorism going. And we go in like a bull in China shop, not knowing the language, not caring about their culture, pushing these people over, pissing them off, with just no understanding of guerrilla warfare. I mean, like I was telling you in the basic school, I spent like a couple days on urban warfare, not really guerrilla warfare, but urban warfare. We were ill prepared. We had the Cold War mindset going into this deal. And it just angers me that we care so little about other countries that allowed us to get in that situation. I mean, we don't care about other countries typically. I mean, overall, most Americans don't travel. We have a very low percentage of passports in this country. We don't go anywhere but Mexico and Canada. The only reason that went up is because it was required in Mexico and Canada after a while. Right. So that went up. People don't travel. They don't see the world and see how people live. They think they live like me, right? No, they don't actually. They don't read books typically. We're just so isolated in our own minds and stuff that what's wrong with going to war? What's interesting is there's a report that came out. They said that $8.5 trillion went to wars from 1996 to now. $8.5 trillion. And they're upset that our debt is the highest ever at 17 trillion. Well, that's half our debt. Had we just not gone to war like that, we wouldn't be in crazy debt like we are now. And it's the same people all upset about their debt are the same ones that have no problem with going to war. So yeah, it does anger me, and my experience of Desert Storm woke me up and kind of slapped me in the face that this can affect me, it can affect anybody. And I was not asked to go to war. I was told to go to war. Vietnam, those guys were told to go to war. And so really, you in this country would say, got all this freedom, but yet you're pushed to go to war. Socially, we're expected to go to war, and you're just ordered. And the reasons are very shaky at best. It makes you a little angry, and it makes you a little in questioning why we do this. And then, of course, I have this potential the CMI stuff going on in my body that who knows what's going on there. That has some medical issues, and 40% of the guys coming over have mental issues that last their lifetimes. What are we doing? We like to play God with these people, like they don't matter. And that's when you don't travel and you don't read and you don't get education and don't think it's important. It's easy to think other people are not worth anything because you don't understand how anybody outside of your worldview can matter. So we jump right into war. What's wrong with that? It's easy, right? Because we like to kick butt. Because we like football. We like win-lose, right? Somebody clearly wins. Well, do you think in Iraq and Afghanistan, was there a clear winner in this deal?
Absolutely
Just like Vietnam, there's no clear winner in that deal. We always say we lost because we got pushed out. But you know how many millions of people died? How many Vietnamese died? And Agent Orange sat there, and they found just even recently people are still having issues with Agent Orange because they just hit that foliage and it just sits there. People are having, the women are having birth defects. They're all just crazy rates in Vietnam because of stuff we did for this fictitious thing called communism that somehow was taking over the world, the domino effect that didn't happen or wasn't going to happen either. And so we do this weird kind of I don't know, tilting at windmills type of stuff. You know what I mean by that? It's uncoded to be, he thought they were knights and soldiers, and he started charging. There was just a windmill.
I see.
This kind of just, we follow weird myths and ideals that aren't necessarily good for us. And we do it all over and all sorts of things. But war is what we're talking about here, and I'm glad I served. I have a whole family of people who served, but I don't really. I'm not happy with our government, who seems to just, at a whim, think it's fine to go to war. And you have all these folks going, oh, let's go to Syria. Oh, let's go to Iran. Iran, who is 3 times the size, the territory is 3 times the size. Military that's not been tested since the 80s, who beat the Iraqis, by the way, in that Iranian war. Iranians won that. Well, it was kind of a standoff. Iranians kind of got the edge there. But yeah, we're going to just go in there and waltz in there and kick butt. Didn't we just learn a lesson? And the American populace don't have a stomach for him. We should call it the Second Gulf War syndrome, or Iraq-Afghanistan syndrome, because now when we need to respond, we can't respond to things we may really need to respond to, because people don't have the stomach for it. I don't have the stomach for it, that's for sure. But a lot of people just was like, well, why should we go in there? We should try to be isolationists again, because, you get stuck there. How many thousand, IEDs, we're talking about the Humvees with canvas sides that just tore through. Half of the deaths in Iraq were from IEDs, because we didn't want to spend the extra cash to armor these vehicles until it was way late in that war. Thousands of our men, our young men, all had their individual lives who, I lucked out and I didn't have problems, and I was born at the right time to go in kind of an easy war, But these young guys, man, they don't have it easy. They saw a lot more than I saw. The guys in Vietnam, the guys in Iraq and Afghanistan now saw a lot more than we saw, because the time in, the intensity of the situation, and not all of them. You got to understand, we all had different situations. If you were in supply in the rear, you probably didn't see anything. But the guys in the front, and I was in the front lines in my war, and I saw some stuff, but nothing like these guys. Were just constantly for a good year and a half, just constantly. And they say those people who want to go back, because they got a charge out of the deal, are sociopaths. And that's not natural. If they want to be there because they've been there a year, let's do another tour and gung ho. If you love that stuff, you're a sociopath. You're not normal. So it's normal to have the normal reaction is post-traumatic stress disorder. Unfortunately, it's sad to say that's a normal reaction for these guys, and it's bad. But
well, we keep going back to Vietnam.
Sure.
The domestic situation at home. How did you experience your homecoming? How did the American public respond to the troops during?
Pretty favorable. They kept calling us heroes, and and we're it was all good, and it was a positive experience. I didn't have anybody spit on me or criticize me really. Not really. There were some people who were critical of war and stuff. They were critical of us and critical of me there, but otherwise, it was more of a conversation and argument there. But, I didn't get all that stuff that I heard about then.
Right.
They got a little bit the second time around. You got some of these people protesting against war and were upset with it, and it was a little more intense. You got a little bit more in the Afghanistan-Iraq war. But Vietnam was just real bad. I mean, it was just definitely. But it tells you a lot about, when it comes to like feedback loops, the more wrong the war, more likely people know about it, understand the length of the time. I don't think Desert Storm we had enough time to react to it. I mean, there's protests and stuff, but if we were there for a long time and had like multiple shifts of folks coming in and out, I think we would have had a lot more protesting and stuff. But, Vietnam was such a long war, and this has been such a long war, that you had all these protests, and, and there was no reason to be there. Vietnam definitely by itself there's no reason, really. I mean, if you think about it, there's really no reason to have been there. and it was hard to defend. We just were there because we wanted to be there, and our president and generals wanted to be there. But it's not like their kid was going.
So what steps does American society need to take to kind of dissolve those illusions that we have, that isolationism that you were talking about, our that cultural lens that we're looking through at the rest of the world? What steps?
What do we need to do more now?
What's the first step?
Well, I think we need to do a lot more of kind of a cultural sensitivity to other cultures. I think there's a lot of people who want religion in class, for example.
Right.
Well, have a world religion class where you see a lot of religions. What we did in this last war had very much had to do, and our failures had a lot to do with our inability to understand or care about other cultures. An example of that is, and I think General Petraeus was an amazing general when he was in there. And, I know he got defamed because of that whole incident that occurred with the writer and stuff. You heard about that probably. But General Petraeus came in there as a general, and he was an amazing guy. He basically said, why we're struggling is we don't understand these people. And so he said, look, we need to have translators in there. We need to, when you come out the door, instead of ramming the door and running in there and taking the suspect and putting their face in the dirt, and they would actually put their face in the dirt, held their hair by their hair, pull their hair up, and then ask them questions from there as their family was watching. I mean, they say that the worst thing you can do to a Muslim man is to put their face in the dirt. It's the biggest humiliation you can think of. Well, these guys were so highly recruitable for jihadism. It's amazing. We're just creating jihads left and right because of our stupid actions. So what he says, don't do that anymore. What you need to do is you knock on the door. You want them, knock on the door and ask for them. And they found these people actually came to the door. They didn't want harassing from their family. Go and take them down and ask them questions. They were also successful there. Other things they were doing is, they had a tendency to say, oh, you're part of this sect, you're all guilty until proven innocent. And then basically, it's kind of like this. This is the one anecdote I use, or metaphor is, if I say, here's pizza, right? And it's your favorite, what's your favorite pizza?
Pepperoni.
Pepperoni. This is pepperoni pizza, and you're incredibly hungry, right? So here, have a piece, right? So you pick a piece, right? It's like, oh, I'm hungry. Thank you so much, right? You probably do that, right?
Right.
But what if I had a gun and I said, okay, here's pizza, and I eat it? Are you gonna think twice about eating it?
I'm not. I'm gonna eat it.
You're gonna do it only because of the gun, but now you're like, what's wrong with this pizza? Right? So kind of like democracy. We said, hey, democracy, you want it, but we didn't do that. We want democracy, right?
Right.
Don't you want democracy? Okay, we're forced to. Okay, I wonder what's wrong with this democracy. You got to force it down our throat, right? Rather than wanting us. Because, in America, did we go, oh God, British has a gun to our head, be a democracy? No, we came up with that ourselves. Right. It was organic. We didn't give anything for them to be organic about anything. We just said, you're going to be a damn democracy because we know democracy is superior, so therefore. They don't understand what democracy is beyond what it's on paper that we showed them, Right. They don't understand what it is. And so they didn't trust us. Why would they trust us, especially if we have a gun to their head, And so we didn't build trust. And so what he did is he said, look, for one, it's a bribe culture. So what you need to do is you need to bribe folks, the friendlies, and have them strip their resistance away and try to be friends with them. And so then the next thing you know, the enemies become smaller and smaller and smaller. Instead of everyone being an enemy, a small group was an enemy. So we started focusing on this small group. Petraeus had so much success, he turned that war around. It's just his philosophy. Let's understand people. Let's understand where they're coming from. Radically changed Iraq. Radically. And just from that mindset, you got to understand and care about who your enemy is. And maybe they're not your enemy. Maybe you just have a disagreement. Maybe you're just putting them off a center or onto the defensive. Have you asked them? No. Do you care about them? Well, no. They're all evil, right? Well, I thought it was Al-Qaeda that was evil, not Islam.
Right.
Islam's like 1 billion people. You want to make 1 billion people pissed off at you? Why don't you cut off? Why don't you do the little crazy sect? Why, we're not going to blame Christianity for McVeigh, are we? You know McVeigh?
Yeah.
He was a Christian identity guy, which is a radical nut job Christian sect. So is Al Qaeda. Even Muslims think Al Qaeda is a radical nut job Muslim sect. So we're going to blame all Muslims for this little group of Muslims. Are we going to blame all Christianity for what Christian identities did? No. It's not even, doesn't even make sense, right? So it doesn't make sense that we're blaming Al Qaeda, all Muslims for Al Qaeda. So, but that's what we did. We put them all on the defensive. I mean, even we had police go to Cleveland and started trying to root out, terrorism in Cleveland, right? Because there's a whole lot of Muslims in Cleveland. They might not know that, but there's a big group of Muslims there.
Right.
We put them all on the defensive. And we're like, instead of saying, hey, we know that they're crazy, we want to be your friends and help you out. Do you know anything about these guys? We could have gotten a lot of information, maybe even pay them some money. Hey, help us out. No, we put them all in defense. We're like, we don't know anything. We didn't get any information, any good information. And we thought, we'll get information by torturing them. What's fascinating is McCain got tortured in Vietnam. And you know what his answer was? Oh, I said all sorts of lies just to get them to stop. You don't get good information from torturing people. And there's a recent report that came out on torture. It said, we didn't get any good information out of torturing people. That's a recent report, maybe in the last year or so. We didn't get anything good out of torture. You don't get anything out of torturing. But I'll tell you whatever, just stop beating me. Stop it. And, so it's amazing what we just don't learn. And what I'm afraid of, we're not going to learn for the next war that we get ourselves into. We're not going to learn from that because we never critiqued what we've done. We're not critiquing what we're doing. And we tend to think it's a partisan deal. Oh, it's a Republican's fault or it's a Democrat's fault. My guy will change things. No, your guy won't change things. Obama, in my opinion, has not changed several things that Bush did. Whether it's NSA spying, he didn't change that. And he didn't start it, but he didn't change it. It's a systemic problem. It's a problem. It goes beyond Republican Democrats. It's just something about our American system that perpetuates that. In 2016, if we get a Republican, guess what? We're going to still do NSA spying, right? And did you realize with NSA spying this last year, we freaked out about that? Real bad, right? That's people are like, oh my God. Well, did you know in 2006, I think it was 2006, there was like a guy who won the Pulitzer Prize talking about NSA spying under the Bush administration. Won a Pulitzer Prize writing about how Bush's administration was doing the same thing. But we forgot about it, and then we think it's all Obama when it's actually Bush and Obama. They perpetuate this. So war, hey, we have Democrats and Republicans that perpetuate war. I mean, where did war start in Vietnam? Did you know when war started in Vietnam? 1946. Americans' involvement, at least, was 1946 as advisors. Why? To help the French. The French, who are our friends during World War II, we were doing them a favor by helping them get back their colony. Did you know they gave back the Vietnamese colony after during World War II because France couldn't take care of it because, of course, they were under siege. So they said, oh, we'll let you guys be independent for a while. And then did you know that the leader of Vietnam at the time went to America? Ho Chi Minh went to America, to Boston area. And I think did he go to Harvard, I think? Harvard, MIT, something like that. And got a degree. And then he came back and he created a constitution that quoted our Constitution. Okay? And so we say, hey, French, we'll help you get that, And why did the French want it? It's a colony. They got a lot of tin, oil, rubber, whatnot. That's what a colony's for. So we helped them, and then we get embroiled in this thing. Dien Bien Phu happens in 1954. They lose out, so we took over. We could have just left them, but no, we stayed. And then by 64, we sent in 10,000 troops. By 68, I mean, we were totally in this thing for years. But what's important to understand, that happened under Truman, perpetuated by Eisenhower, Republican, perpetuated by Kennedy, perpetuated by Johnson, and both Democrats, and then perpetuated by Nixon, a Republican. That thing lasted like 5 presidents and went with both parties.
Right.
Both parties are pro-war. I mean, they often initiate it for different reasons, but they'll perpetuate it no matter what for their own reasons. Because it's hard for us to pull people out of war, unfortunately. But I mean, just that's, politics there. But
So during your time at OSU,
yeah, let's talk about that.
You received a master's degree in political science. How did your war experiences contribute to your ideological understanding of war?
Well, I went and got my started my PhD program, and then I started teaching after that. A few years after that, I was doing research and stuff. But I got to teaching, and it was around 9/11 that I started teaching, and I started being critical. Oh my God, the students did not respond to that at all, about freedom of speech and dissent. And I said, this is the most important time to have dissent, which is being critical of not of free speech, but of your government. And they were not happy with that. I mean, most of them were very upset. And it's funny because I remember, I think maybe in the spring of '02, maybe, I had the student, they stayed after class and were like, Mr. Wood, I'm so sorry. I didn't have my doctorate at the time. Mr. Wood, I'm so sorry. I think they hate you. Because we had some intense talks about the war and stuff. And I think they hate you. Because they were just a lot of negative sentiments about me saying anything critical about what we're doing over there. Because everybody's just like, yes, we got to go over there. There's no question. Of course, this was the time that Bush had his most popular poll ratings in history. I mean, he was up there in the 90s, low 90s, depending on the poll. Gallup poll had him, I think, had him at 92%. So at that time, when he's 92%, I mean, even Democrats liked him for a while, and it started eroding. And Republicans kind of stayed with him a little bit, but they went to the 80s over time, 70s. And you don't question the president at that time. You just don't do it. I mean, it's just like the Dixie Chicks. You heard about the Dixie Chicks. They started criticizing the president and saying, I'm not proud of him being in Texas. And I think this might have been even '04 or something like that. And, people are burning their records. And what's fascinating, though, at that time, as the poll numbers pulled down, they found a new audience. The audience where people were critical of Bush, and they started listening to the Dixie Chicks, and their sales went back up again. They found a different audience. Because the people who traditionally listened to them were the Bush lovers. It was all country western stuff, right? It was all country. It was just slightly different. It was a tweak on it, but they got a new audience because their people were hungry to be critical of Bush at the time. So that was pretty fascinating to see that. But it was hard to be critical of Bush at that time. And I was really doing it here at OSU, in a very conservative state, conservative university, poking the administration's eyes a little bit, trying to get critical thinking going, which was what my point was. But I was critical of these guys. It's freedom of speech, and I wasn't like totally off, criticizing, but just enough to be critical, and they were not having it. And I backed off a little bit because of that, but I just couldn't believe that they were so angry at me. And I could tell in the evals too, they weren't happy with me. But that, thank goodness, you get some sense of protection at a university to say what you want to say. Not as much as a grad student. I was more of a grad student instructor at the time. But wow, yeah, you can't dissent during wartime very easily.
Not very easily.
Not very easily, especially places like this where it's real. They're very. It depends. If Obama started this thing, Republicans would be out there going, "Oh my God, I can't believe you did this," right? Or had Gore. It was Gore who won, and Gore said, "Oh my God, I can't believe," and it'd be the Democrats defending him. So politics is funny how that is. It's sad because they're so partisan in this country, but it's the way it is.
Well, war is something that's always been bipartisan.
Well, it depends. It's often bipartisan in the beginning, but anytime you have a prolonged war, you have this rally around the flag effect. And anytime you have a prolonged war, that support wanes over time, and it gets too long. Now everybody hates it. We've already found that with Iraq and Afghanistan. The majority don't like what was going on. But you have the rally around the flag effect. After 9/11, oh my God, instead of OU flags around here and OSU flags, on your pickup truck going, it was U.S. flags. And U.S. flags were all over the place. I would say for a good couple, 2-3 years, a lot of U.S. flags. And that just seemed to wane. But especially as Obama takes office, and all of a sudden people are like, they go from you got to be a patriot to, oh, what is patriotism? Patriot? I'm not a patriot, not to this government. So yeah, I think this is kind of weird, and had it been the shoe on the other foot, it would have been different. It's just people don't like. If you're a Republican, you don't like the Democrats having success. If you're a Democrat, you don't like the Republicans having success. I mean, that's, again, and we blame partisanship when the reality is it's systematic. It's outside of partisanship. And it's not that we love war. I think we get fearful. It's like, oh God, I got to react. I don't know how to react. In this complicated, complex world, we tend to knee-jerk react on things. And what's sad about it, we don't like to act before and prepare. We knee-jerk after it happens. It's just amazing. Knee-jerk, we could have prepared. We could have prepared for 9/11. There's a lot of stuff we could have prepared for and thought about. Well, that's not going to happen. Oh, that's not going to happen. Oh, that's not going to happen. I mean, for example, in planes, did you know there was a push for reinforced doors for pilots? So you can't just open the door very easily. It's supposed to, kind of like a double lock or whatnot. It wasn't that expensive, but they're like, oh, we're not going to do that. But after 9/11, of course we should have done that. Mm-hmm. Of course we should have done that. That would have changed the whole thing. They could have gotten into there and gotten the pilots if they had those reinforced doors.
So from a soldier's perspective,
yeah, or a Marine.
Or a Marine, rather.
Right, they're different.
Yeah. So from a Marine's perspective,
yeah,
what happens after that reaction? What happens to the soldiers after the war? What should happen to the soldiers after the war? What
should we take care of them and stuff?
Take care of.
I tell you, you put people in harm's way, you take care of them after. And if it's a lifelong affliction, you take care of them the rest of your life. I mean, that's the way it should be. You don't put people in harm's way where they could have their arm taken off, their leg, their head messed up the rest of their life, and not take care of them. I think it's a travesty in this country that we totally ignore these folks. We give them inadequate service. It takes you 3 months to get through the VA just to even get started for your paperwork and stuff, and then not even giving these people care. In Arizona, 14 folks died waiting. It's a travesty of this country. We're so pro-war, but when the vets come home, you're a big loser if you complain, To me, this is why a lot of people with post-traumatic stress disorder won't admit they have it. Because, I'm weak, right? No, you're human. You're human. And we don't want to take care of you. We got to take care of people. Especially, if there's anybody we should give health care to, it's got to be to the guys who've been over, who really are affected by this stuff. And most of them aren't going to lie about it. You're going to lie? We have doctors, they tell if you're lying about your ailments, Come on. You go through this whole inspection process. It takes forever. And they put you on disability. They give you medical care, and they should. They should, by gosh. You're screwing with these people's lives. In fact, you might be radically changing those people's lives physically, so they're not functional the rest of their life. You better take care of them.
Absolutely.
There's a guy at the library here. I was told that he had, he has TMI and TBI, traumatic brain injury, and his head shakes. Right, he can't read, and he would go to the VA, and they were like, "Oh, you're pretending." What? The guy's like, he can't read. He can't concentrate on stuff, but he's pretending. It's just amazing. It kind of reminds me, because I don't know if you know, but the Reagan administration. Of course, they didn't like government, and so Social Security, what they do is they say, okay, if you apply for Social Security disability, for example, you apply the first time, we'll reject you, just automatic. You apply the second time, we'll reject you again. The third time, okay, yeah, we'll accept you. But what they're hoping is you get dissuaded and you give up on it. Oh, they rejected me, so I don't go for disability benefits. And we found that that's what was happening. And so this is this whole idea of we don't want to give care to people necessarily, even if they need care or deserve care, because we don't want people dependent on this stuff. And it's like, it's just amazing to me. There's just such a selfishness, I think, in our culture. And we call it self-interested, but we don't care about people outside of ourselves. And a lot has to do, again, with how we're brought up. brought up to be very competitive. That's why we love sports. I mean, I love sports. And, winner take all type of system. And that means, well, losers, there's a lot of losers out there. And, same with war, winner take all. And we always kick butt. It was a big embarrassment. Vietnam was a big embarrassment. It was hard, like, what do we think about this? But we knew we just could not do that. Did you know that there was a study out there that said recently, and I'm going to be off on the numbers, but it was something like anytime you go to a foreign place and try to occupy it, you lose 66% of the time. Why? I mean, just think about it. These people know the land, you don't. You're trying to occupy, which is a very intense thing. I mean, just like any time you have an offense of something, you had more people. If you have defense in the same number, it's hard to just stop people doing what they're doing, control them, and take them over. It's not easy to do that, especially when the technology. And what people don't realize too is you have two conventional. Let's say you have two enemies or two folks opposing each other, both conventional, right? And both have strong armies. Well, you can fight and it's equal footing. Now, if I have a strong army and I'm conventional, and then I'm a tiny army and I'm conventional, I'm going to lose. It makes sense. That's what happened in Desert Storm. They went conventional, we went conventional. Of course, we're always conventional. They were conventional, they lose. So what happens in Iraq, Afghanistan? They said, and they took a page out of our history, Revolutionary War, right? Where we went conventional. We went toe-to-toe with the British initially, and we're just losing like left to right. We were ragtag. We didn't have the weapons. We could not meet them technologically or supply-wise, but we lived there. We knew the territory better, and we just said, screw them. We're going to go, instead of, generally warfare is you line up and then just keep shooting each other really close, because we didn't have rifling in the rifles, and of course you realize the bullet wouldn't go straight; it'd go, like that, because we didn't have rifling, and that's why you had to be real close. And what's hopeful that I shoot here, it'll hit you, and then this one hit you, and like that, and then whoever's left standing wins. Well, the British were always winning. They had a winning strategy, and they had a whole setup where you can change your rifle out, and these guys would be standing up, you'd sit down. Stand up, switch it, and they were really good at that. We weren't, so we thought, hey, let's do stuff like when they're marching, we'll get them by surprise, or hey, let's flank them, and that's not generally warfare. What do we do? I mean, we all of a sudden we started fighting this enemy in Iraq and Afghanistan. We were like, they're not playing by the rules, not wearing uniforms. Yeah, because that's a stupid strategy for them. They're gonna lose. This way, they have a chance, and every time these guys go, a defensive country on their own territory, they turn to guerrilla warfare, and they're going to win 2/3 of the time. It's like we know this. It's not like we don't know this stuff, but we had such a Cold War conventional mindset. We thought we can just go in here, and just like Desert Storm, which is a bad model for Iraq and Afghanistan. Again, in my basic school, I didn't learn any of that stuff. It was all conventional, right? And in like a couple days of urban warfare, which is not pure guerrilla warfare. It's IRA stuff. You realize it was all IRA.
For those
Ireland and the IRA,
right?
It was that, which was not full guerrilla. There's some guerrilla aspects to it, but it was not full what we saw in Iraq and Afghanistan. We were not prepared, and we put this much time in all the training, 6 months time, 2 days. Just, kind of basic, kind of run through it real quick. We didn't really prepare. And so it took us this whole transition into Afghanistan, Iraq, to finally kind of switch that over. But by that time, we had lost a bunch of lives. We were entrenched. And our poll numbers have just gone down. And I'm glad we're finally out of it, but we haven't learned. I don't think we've learned a whole lot, other than going, well, they don't know what they're doing. There's all anti-government stuff going on right now. We just don't trust government, and they can't do anything right, and it kind of gets just all thrown in there. So, but in a generation or so, we'll forget about that. We'll shrug it off and go, okay, let's get into something else, and then we'll go, what happened there? Why were we there for a decade? And
so it appears to me that your military experience certainly was a catalyst in your decisions to go back to school, educate yourself about the world. You mentioned world traveling. how did the Marines mold you into more of a positive character? So we've discussed a lot of the war critically. What aspects of the military promote?
I think I had a lot of learning to try to be prepared for things, a lot more disciplined about things. That I have to rely on myself for things. I can't rely things aren't just going to work out if I don't make them work out. So a lot of self-reliance. It did build me into. My dad was like, "Build you into a man." And in some ways, it did. It made me grow up, definitely. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that experience and that training. I think the military is a fine institution. I'm critical of, again, going back to, when I was in teaching here, I got interviewed by a newspaper because they found out I was a veteran. Because I told some of my stories and stuff like that. Students seemed to like that. And so I got an interview, and my whole thing was support the troops, but I don't necessarily support the government that put us there. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of part of the headline and stuff. And I got some criticism for that because I wasn't totally supportive. But when we talked about it, it's like, oh, okay, you are supportive of the troops. And it's true, I'm supportive of the troops. Heck, I was part of that whole, I was one of them, I was there. Of course support you. They didn't ask for that. Maybe a few of them were like, I'd love to go gung-ho, but we didn't ask to be where we're at and do what we're doing. We're just told what to do because we feel like we're serving our country and we're doing something positive. I mean, that's why I got in. I got in because not only could I pay for college, but I thought I was doing something positive, and I would build myself, into, a person that's a good person who has moral fiber and whatnot. And I feel like I've done a lot of that, and I've learned, and I tell you, it's one of those things that it's just like boot camp, where a lot of people say, I'll tell you at boot camp, I value the experience. I learned a lot from boot camp. I will never want to repeat it. Right?
I've heard that.
Desert Storm's the same thing. Value the experience. I would never want to repeat that. It was very harrowing in a lot of ways, and very scary, and a lot of close calls. But I learned a lot, and it was a valuable experience in that way. I wouldn't repeat it, but I think it changed my life, and I think in a positive direction for sure. It did open to me again some kind of notion of. It took me a few years, but I think it built this kind of idea that I'm not gung ho about the military and the way, not the military itself or the people. I'm fine with that. I have problems with our callous attitude toward war. Like, what's wrong with that? And it's not just our military, because our people support that. Mm-hmm. Our people support that, and they promote it, and they push it, and there's like, what's wrong with war? And there's still people who totally support what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan. Even Vietnam. I had a professor here who is an interesting guy, taught about Vietnam. He was an English professor, and he was gung-ho about it. It's like, we did nothing. It was all the media who screwed it up. I was like, really? It was the media who screwed up Vietnam? Really? And I did a lot of reading about Vietnam. I was like, I don't think it was just the media, But, that was his perspective, and he was a Vietnam vet, and that's how he came out. And it could be that that's how he rationalized it, to feel sane about it. But no, there's still a percentage who support Vietnam and what we did, and, these called Cold War warriors, who still believe that. Of course, he's old, he's retired now and stuff like that. That generation's gone for the most part, and at least the decision making of the United States. But did it change me? Yeah, definitely. Now, I wouldn't say right at the time. When I went to college, I still wasn't. I did change me to journalism. I did go to journalism because of that. My undergrad's journalism. I was writing my journals that you'll have right there. Those journals actually made me explore journalism, and then I got an undergrad. And then I realized that I couldn't make any money going to journalism, so I went and became an officer. So I made twice as much being an officer, plus BAQ and all that business. But and then I didn't really like that, so that I went back I got a master's in political science, and I liked academia, and I liked teaching, and I liked. And I do a lot of work, by the way, in the classroom, because I think, if you see this tape, and you think, oh, he's real biased and stuff like that. No, I believe that you get students to think about stuff, not what to think about, right? So I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to, maybe think about certain things. I'm not going to say you're right or wrong necessarily. I might disagree with you. We're all human. I can't agree with everything that people say. But I'm here to try to get you to think about who you are. So what I do in class, because I believe in perspectives, which journalism really taught me about perspectives, was I have my students, in my American government class anyway, to understand and label their perspective. They take a test called Pew Charitable Trust Typology Quiz. So Pew Charitable Trust Typology Quiz. And there's 9 possibilities. So anywhere from liberal, new coalition Democrat, all the way to staunch conservative, Main Street Republican. There's libertarian. There's bystander. There's disaffected. There's hard-pressed Democrat. So there's a whole array of these things. So instead of a multiple choice question, I give my students, and not an essay, because they could all write an essay about what they believe, but at least this gives them like a long multiple choice answer, forced choice versus true and false, which is what we give in America. You're a Democrat or Republican, and if you're independent, you really have no say. And I'm registered independent, and I really don't have say in primaries and stuff like that, which is really annoying. I wish we had an open primary in Oklahoma, but we don't. But at the same time, I think it's good to try to have some of that independence. But I want students to understand their viewpoint, and I respect them for that viewpoint. I just want them to understand their viewpoint and hear what other people have to say, but respect their viewpoint. So just because you're staunch or conservative, you believe this, they should hear the liberal. The liberal should hear the staunch conservative. Because I do believe that in America, if we were all like right-wing conservatives, that would be a scary country. And it would be scary because, it'd be good because we'd have a lot of good security, but it would be fascist probably. If we was an all liberal country, though, we'd be all hippie liberals, but then we would not have security, probably. We'd just like, oh, whatever, not think about it, and be invaded a long time ago. It's good to have that diversity. There's a reason why, some reason we're here, and we have a diverse point of view on things. And that's a good thing. We forget about that. We forget about there's value in those other points of view, and I forget about it sometimes because other people just kind of annoy me in what they're saying. But I think a lot has to do with not really thinking much about what they're doing, and it's like they don't read much or they don't travel much. I think if more people did that, we'd have a lot more tolerant world. But yeah.
Well, I like to ask this question particularly to veterans. What are the worst and the greatest facets of humanity that you've experienced?
Wow. Okay, so what's the greatest?
Let's start with the worst. What's the worst aspect of humanity that
I've physically observed, like I've seen, or that I've just read about, or even on TV?
I'll let you take a choice on that.
And what do you mean the worst? Like certain people or certain acts?
Yeah, like that you've personally experienced or that has affected you personally. What's the worst aspect of humanity?
Probably hatred and intolerance. Hatred and intolerance. You see it all the time. Right now, I would argue, for example, the gay movement is probably the latest civil rights movement, for example. It really is. And because we're talking about the 14th Amendment, equal protection, and people are so hateful about gay people. It's just fascinating. But, that's what we did with African Americans years ago, and women before that. And, it just goes on. And Hispanics, of course, immigration now, it's such hatred. And to me, that's ugly, and I think it really is symptomatic of some of the root causes of our world. But seeing that, I see it all the time, it angers me, I guess. I'm intolerant of intolerance, I guess.
I think you and I are in agreement on that aspect.
Yeah.
So,
what's the best?
Before I ask what's the greatest,
right.
How do we overcome that?
How do we overcome that?
How would you take a step in your own...
Again, going back to understand viewpoints and ways of looking at things, promoting education, promoting travel, promoting reading, promoting...
experience.
Yeah, experience of the world and everything around you. So that's how you try to get over that, at least. Unfortunately, I realize that most people won't do that. I'm surprised how many people, when I go to India, I've gone to India with my wife, and I remember coming back and be like, why'd you go there? There's so many people that just don't want to see other things. They don't want to even see it on TV, potentially. It's just like, America's the greatest, and it's great here. I wouldn't want to know anywhere else. You can experience it, at least. And I'm telling you, I've been to India. There's a lot of people who want to live there. I wouldn't want to live there. I went there, and I know I wouldn't want to live there. I thought maybe, because so many people are into India, they want to live there. Oh, maybe it'd be that. But no, great experience. I wouldn't want to live there, and I've learned that because I've been there. I mean, it's smelly. Poverty is atrocious. It's fascinating. Everything around there is just fascinating, but it's not, wow, I wouldn't want to live there. The infrastructure's bad, just all around. But, Kenya, I've been to Kenya. It was just amazing there too, but same thing, I wouldn't want to live there, And you could really make anywhere nice if you had all the money in the world, but, that's why leaders don't have a problem living where they live, because they have all the money in the world, and they keep it, and they have palaces, and, well, gosh, you can make any place wonderful if you have the palace and all the food you need and whatnot. Libya is a great place for Gaddafi when he was there.
I'm sure it was.
It was a great place, Everything you want, just go, I need this. So, and I think that's a problem, because a lot of those people hoard that money, and they hoard the resources, and they don't care about their people. It's just, at the same time, I would argue that a lot of people make that happen. In Kenya, for example, when I was in Kenya, it's interesting, because I've been in office. I'm in office right now as vice mayor of my town. And it's fascinating. I've learned a lot about campaigns, elections, and as you know, if I run for office, you like me, you might give me money. You might give me $50 or something like that for my campaign, right?
Right. Okay.
If I'm in Kenya, though, I'm a politician, and I want to run for office, you don't give me any money. I give you so many shillings. Vote for me, right? It's a bribe. And what happens is, then I get in office, then I want mine back. I use the office to enrich myself, because I paid people off. And it takes rich people to get there, but then you wonder why, for example, Mitt Romney, right, made he has $250 million to his name, okay? He would have been the richest president had he been elected, richer than the last 6 presidents combined. That much money. And they're all millionaires, by the way, but that tells you something, all right? So you go to Kenya, and when I went in 2012, the government's changed over, but they had a prime minister and a president at the time. You had Kibaki and Relia. Both those guys had riches of $2 billion each in a country of just pure poverty. I mean, most people you think poverty's bad here. How about poverty in Kenya? Hard to believe that poverty there is, they have slums where people have zero money. It's just because they enrich themselves. They don't care about their people. They enrich themselves. It's terrible, And it's a bribery culture. You can do anything. You got to bribe people. It's a terrible. But it's funny. My friend who I helped, I basically, what would be the word for it? I helped him on his campaign. I gave him advice. I was an advisor of his campaign, and he was running for parliament at the time. He was going to run for president, and basically when I got in there over time was when I learned more about Kenya politics. Basically, I met the guy on Facebook. He actually contacted me on Facebook and go, hey, I need help on my campaign. Can you help me? Okay. And I didn't know him at all. So we got to know each other, and so I started helping him over time with his parliament campaign. And when I went over there, I wanted to see what projects we were doing, because he also got me on this board called Sapasset, and he had a project for the Homa Bay women. Homa Bay women were these women who are on Lake Victoria, and basically, if you're on Lake Victoria and you're a female and you don't have a husband, you can't fish. The culture is you can't fish on the water in Lake Victoria as a woman. The guys fish, right? It's a guy culture, guy-dominant culture, male-dominated. And so if the woman wants to live, typically the guys will say, have sex with me, and I'll give you food. So AIDS is rampant on the Victoria River, or at the Lake Victoria. And so what we did is we went and wrote a grant that would take them about 45-minute walk from Lake Victoria to kind of a plantation area, kind of an open area where they could farm themselves. The idea is each one would have their own plot of land, and they could farm, raise that food, be self-sustaining. And they were all HIV widows. And we had about 80 of them who ended up, we had like 300 who applied, and 80 of them got it. And so I went to Homa Bay with my friend, which is kind of northwest of Nairobi, and I got to meet these women who got plows because of this. We got about 15,000 euros for this through a grantor in Germany. We tried a public grantor. They wouldn't give anything to Kenya, so we had to go to a private grantor. And so we gave them plows, we gave them oxen, we gave them seeds, we gave them spades, everything to be self-sustaining. And these women testified to me. And it's interesting because my friend Jared gave me way too much credit for this. He was like telling all these women in Swahili that I did this grant for them. And so they were praising me and crying. And one of the spokesmen was like, "You changed my life. And I have something to live for now. And thank you so much." And she started to weep. And I went and hugged these women and shake their hands. It was such a moving experience. And to me, I guess moving into what's wonderful about the world is those things can happen if you make a difference. You can make a difference in their lives. I got too much credit for that because I helped with that grant. I didn't do that grant, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I wasn't on the ground buying the stuff. That's Walt Jared. He's an amazing guy. And I'm so glad and so grateful he's around. And I could help him. I want to go back to Kenya. Bonnie's not into me going back to Kenya, but I want to go back because it's not the safest place in the world, But I think it's an amazing place. It's just, everything's wondrous. I mean, it's, for me, because it's all just intellectually stimulating. Like, wow, they don't have toilet paper, and they don't have toilets, and they don't have, how do they do this? How do they do that? How do they live? How can I help these people? Because there's so much opportunity and room to help people there for little. There's just so much. I mean, you could just do little things for these people. It's amazing. You just radically change their life. And so that's meaningful for me. When I can make a difference like that, it's just wow. And being on city council, I can make a difference in people's lives. Just little things. Whether it's their water meter have problems or trying to just listen to them because they're all angry about stuff. That's meaningful for me. Helping people, teaching class where I'm teaching students and they don't understand government. They're all upset about stuff, and we talk and get them to dialogue, and they have light bulbs turn on, and you're just like, wow, they're getting this, and they like it, and they get turned on with stuff, and it changes the direction of their life because of that. It just, wow. So for me, it's all about making a difference in people's lives. And I don't care, when it comes to conservatives or liberals, I've helped shape the lives of students, regardless of ideology. Even people who are really pro-war and people are critical of it, it doesn't matter for me because I get all kinds. It's all about trying to, engage whoever. So to me, the best of humanity is when you can make others thrive, if you can help with that. And in turn, that makes me thrive. Right? It gives me meaning, because if I didn't have all that, I would just be, I don't know, I would be depressed all the time and just out of it. But that's what makes me tick, and I'm always looking for those experiences, and so that's why I want to go back to Kenya, because I just see so much opportunity to do that and understand. See, my problem is I've helped from afar from 2008 to 2012, and I was writing these grants with them and helping them and translate, because they don't know English real well. So I have to rewrite this stuff for them a lot of times and make it so it's understandable. Otherwise, just because these are people who know English and stuff, the grantors.
Right.
And it's just like, okay, now what do you mean by this, Jared? And so we're going on Facebook or email and going back and forth. And then finally seeing these projects that they're talking about. It's like, wow, home by women. What does that mean? So I've seen some pictures and stuff before, but then just seeing them, talking to them, getting to know them a little bit. And of course, find out what their other needs are, and find that I'm limited in how much I can help them. Writing another grant. Well, the grantor doesn't want them to have this as a repeat project. They want to go on to another project. So I don't have any money to give these people, these women, And I can give them a little bit out of my income, and I've donated for other things, like the Brosis Center, which is a little school that we have over there too. The kids are just wonderful. I didn't spit. I don't know if you've ever done this where you spit in kids. hold them hands, and they love it. They're like, me too, me too. And like I was dizzy after like 6, 7 little kids, and there's a little kids. But, I gave them like a week's worth of food. Just gave them like $40 worth of shillings, and that fed them for a week. Fed them rice and beans, which is all they eat is rice and beans. And I bought them a tree in their Brosis Center in the center, and so I get pictures every once in a while from Abel, who's the director there, of this tree that's growing. And I realize he's doing that so he wants to get a little more money. It's kind of the sentiment there. But I'm making a difference. I made a difference in their lives just a little bit. I wish I could do more. I wish I was rich and I could just hand out money to people and make huge differences. In one of the slums, something I didn't do, but I saw it in the process. In the slum, it would rain and just fill up with water and be stenchy water, and it was just promoting disease. So these women, found out that it would cost about $15,000 to create these trenches that would go into the Nairobi River, and they were French, and they went home and raised the $15,000 and paid the money out, and they created these trenches. So now there's trenches that go through the slums, this one slum, and it moves the water out into the Nairobi River. Makes a huge difference. $15,000 for thousands of these people who have no money whatsoever. And they don't have an opportunity to have education, so that's why we have some schools there to try to give them even a % chance of getting out of that situation. A % chance. Even with all that, it's a % chance, because it's 0 chance if you do nothing. They are not getting out. It's impossible to get out of the slums if you don't have an education. It's impossible. You can't do anything. You can't get a job even in Nairobi if you don't have an education. You stay there in your humble life and just generation. It's sad. But, again, the bright side is if you can make a difference and make people thrive, there's a lot of people who believe that all people are bad and selfish and, not worth it. I really think that we express both self-interest and altruism. And we're not, altruism is a selfishness or selflessness that I want to help people. And even if it doesn't help me necessarily, even if it makes me feel good about it, some people say that's self-interested. I don't agree with that. But I think we're both. I think we be self-interested all the time. It's easy to be self-interested. It's tough to be altruistic. It's tough trying to help people because it takes energy and time, and it takes education to know that those things are out there. Well, I tell my students all the time, you got to know and you got to care, because they feed on themselves. If you know more, you'll care more. If you care more, you'll know more, because you'll want to know more. And if you keep doing that, you're going to get to a place where you can do things. So
I think with concision, you basically just answered kind of the great dichotomy of human nature and how we can overcome that, or at least the steps to take.
Yeah.
Before I close with my final question, is there anything in this interview that we haven't discussed that you would like to discuss? I realize it's been very substantial, so.
Well, I guess the only thing I have is that, it's an interesting process. I've never thought of recording my ideas or about the war and all that business, or giving you my diaries, which I'm kind of excited about. If we can scan those and keep them preserved, I think that's cool. Because they're falling apart right now. So I was looking at them like, oh my God, these are going to be just tearing up soon. You can see the condition they're in, but they've been in boxes. So I think that's cool. I have pictures I can get you. I definitely went back, but I'll let you scan them and whatnot.
Absolutely.
But I think it's great because this stuff will be potentially preserved. I mean, that those who preserve history write history in the end, right? Because they not only do they write it and preserve it, there's a lot of stuff that's been written that's we don't know about because it hasn't been preserved. Those ancient libraries that were burned, well, we don't know anything about that because they're burned.
I'm still sad about that.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that. So I got a little excited about telling my story, and unfortunately I didn't really prepare for it. I thought I'll just talk, and so that's why my stories kind of went back in time, back and forth, because I haven't really thought. A lot of this is, for me, a muddle because it's just the past, and I haven't thought about it in a long time. But it's definitely part of me, And again, I go back and forth between. I love the Marine Corps in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, I didn't like the Marine Corps. I didn't like some of the mentality of folks in the Marine Corps. It was all gung ho, it was kick butt, and America does everything right all the time. But it's like anything. It's like if America does everything right all the time, then you never fix what ails America. America's not perfect. If you think it's perfect all the time, you don't fix it. You just keep making stumbling problem. You keep stumbling over and over again, and not making progress. And this is why it's funny. You go to Europe and places, people joke about how just say you're a Canadian, you get treated better, because they don't respect Americans. They feel like that we're big arrogant dummies. They really do, and they'll say that. I've heard people say that. Americans are just dumb. They're arrogant and they're dumb. And there's a lot to that. We are arrogant, and we're maybe not dumb in a sense we don't know anything, but we're dumb about the rest of the world, and we're dumb about how we really do have to care about people. We're dumb in that we don't want to know, because if you don't want to know, you're not going to care, and if you don't care, you're not going to want to know. It just goes back and forth, and so to know and care is real key. And to know, that means knowing perspectives, understanding perspectives. They say that what's interesting, when you read fiction, they say that creates tolerance. And the reason is because you step in the life of a protagonist, and you see their life, and you go, oh, there's another way of doing things. And you keep doing that, and you keep building on that. And next thing you know, you see your different situations, like, oh, because you internalize it. You might not know where you saw it or whatnot, but you internalize it, and you become more tolerant about the world. So the more you read, even fiction, so read fiction, travel, it opens your eyes. I'm going to lead a bunch of kids to London in the spring, and it's going to be eye-opening for them, even though it's a real safe one, because it's not like, it's the same language. They've all understood what London, but they got excited, which is good, because I have to have 10 folks. But I think it'll still be eye-opening, because they don't do everything the same. They'll learn something about the history and some about government and what they do. So I'm excited about that, getting students to see the rest of the world. We'll see how that trip goes, but I'm excited about it.
I'm excited for you.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's cool that I've always enjoyed OSU, and I've always been alum. I always my favorite sport is OSU sports, if that makes sense. Whatever OSU's doing sport-wise, I'm rooting for them, and I don't get into pros. I don't get into any other teams. I'm just if soccer's on, let's go Cowboys. If it's football, go Cowboys. Baseball, go Cowboys. So I always have a love for OSU. I got all 3 degrees from here, so I spent a lot of time here. I was born here, graduated high school here, so I do feel, and I come here about once a month or so. My wife works here, so I'm definitely tired, or not tired, but definitely tied to OSU, and I bleed orange big time. So I'm excited to have my stuff here in archive, just because it's a place I love. It's a place I feel I can go back to and see it. Maybe other people will see it as well, but they'll see what an OSU person went through and in their life, and they might not agree with me, and that's great. That we're America. That's a good thing about America. Freedom of speech. I doubt I'm conventional in my thinking, but we need those folks, I guess, right? So anyway, and I like to talk about it too. I think about it. So I don't know if there's anything else to say.
Well, I have one more question
Sure.
for you, at the expense of perhaps sounding redundant. What you said about history kind of really prefaces this. Whenever history is recorded, what would you like it to say about you?
Oh, wow. When I die, or by now? Like if I die tomorrow, what should it say? Or at the end of my
Let's go
life?
with that.
If I die right now?
Yeah, why not?
Oh, gosh.
What would you like future generations to learn from what you've lived through?
Wow. You can be patriotic without being blind. I think also, something else I've been quoted on is kind of interesting. I was in D.C. In February, and there's this guy who just out on the street interviewed me. And what he liked of what I said was that people are not stupid in this country. They're distracted. So it's not about the reason we're in these problems, it's not because people are stupid. It's not like they don't have the capacity to know. Overall, most people. There are stupid people, but, and I say that, people laugh, but, there are stupid people, but most people are just distracted. I mean, so many people know about football stats, and they don't know who our congressman is, or their congressman is, which is important. That's your voice in Congress. Who's your state rep? That's your voice on the state level. Who's your city councilman? That's your voice on the city level. You don't know that stuff? You don't know laws that affect you? You don't know why you pay taxes? But yet you're going to go out there and be against taxes or whatnot. Or you're going to be gung-ho about a war you don't know about, But you know about football. You know about the latest quarterback and all their stats. You're not stupid. You're distracted. You're focused on things that don't matter to a majority of the populace. They matter to you and maybe a small clique group. Great. But you can do both. You can chew bubble gum and walk at the same time. Again, people are not stupid. They're distracted, I think, for the most part, and that's a big problem we have. So I feel like if I can promote people to be more knowledgeable about their world, I think that's a positive. So for my legacy, I just hope that people feel like I was maybe a public intellectual who is someone who gets my ideas out and gets people to think of different ways, and not in a partisan way. I do write for the Oklahoma Observer, so I'm hoping some of my ideas get out that way, and that's a monthly journal, and I'm just starting to do that again, and I think it's a great way to get my ideas out, and in the classroom too, get my ideas out in a way that people just are more tolerant, I guess, and more open to having real positive ideas themselves, and being a part of a democracy. I'm amazed. What I tell my students too is that don't go get a degree just for a job. Get a degree for a career. A job can be replaced. A career is you finding your passion, whether it's you finding your hobby, but you make money off of it, so you can feed yourself and move on. But you're happy when you go to work. You wake up going, I need to go to work. I'm excited. You're not going, oh God, I got to go to work again today. This sucks. And you got to drag yourself out of bed. You love what you do, because if you love what you do and you're passionate about what you do, and you end up being good at what you do, and you're hard to beat. If you're passionate about what you do and you're good at it, no one's going to beat you. You're going to keep your job. The problem is we hire people at Walmart who don't know anything about the store. We hire people just for a job, and they don't educate themselves, and they let life get in the way, and they don't educate themselves about their area, and they're not passionate about anything. I know a lot of people are just not passionate about anything, and that's a problem. I don't know why they're not passionate. That's a concern, but be passionate about something. Find what you love, and do that. My dad on his deathbed in 2003, he basically said he was proud of me for doing something I love, because he couldn't do that. He had a family too early, just was pumping gas at gas stations, and he wanted to be a park ranger, he said, which I was surprised because he never talked about being a park ranger to me, but he wanted to be a park ranger. That's what he wanted to do, but he couldn't do that because he had kids and had to go pump gas and make a living, doing that. And he was never happy with that. He was always had kind of a hole in his heart for what he wanted to do. And what I found, if you have passion in what you do, you're more likely to vote. You're more likely to participate in your community. You're more likely to have healthy relationships. You're more likely to understand why government matters and why it's important. And if you critique it in an intellectual way, or a way that makes sense, not just government's bad or taxes are bad, or regulations are bad. Well, there are regulations that are good. There's some regulations that are not so good. Some taxes are good. Maybe taxes aren't so good. There's things that government does is great. There's things that government doesn't do so good. But be more discerning in what you're upset with. It's not all bad. It annoys me when people they lump stuff. But they lump stuff because they don't know. And they don't want to necessarily know. They just want to be angry. But a lot of I think stems with the fact they're not necessarily happy with what they do. We have it. My stepdad, he would come home after work. He hated what he did, and we would set a TV tray in front of him and put his food in front of him, and he would eat, and then watch TV the rest of the night and go to sleep. I never really talked to the guy that much. You know, he hated what he did. You know, it told me a lot about you got to follow your passion. And I think teaching is my passion. Writing is my passion. So it makes me get up in the morning. I want to get up. I got a project to do. I want to get up and do that, you know. So follow your passion and don't be distracted all the time. You know, it's good to be distracted sometimes. I mean, my wife and I love Netflix. We watch movies and shows and stuff, and that's a distraction. But if that's all your day and that's all you do, that's all your energy, I don't know if that's positive for democracy if everybody does that all the time. Be productive in doing something, but follow your passion, you will be. So I guess that's probably good.
Yeah, that's great. This has been illuminating for me as an individual. Your words appear profound.
Well, thank you.
So, as an American, I would like to thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I know that those words get tossed around without much weight, and I'd like to assure you that my words do have weight behind them. As an oral historian, I'd like to thank you for sharing your story
No problem.
with us.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.